Can't you see what I mean? Might as well jump. Go ahead, jump. Might as well jump. Go ahead, jump. Woo-hoo.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you've had a good lunch. Welcome to the Legal Tech panel of South Summit. I've been asked to introduce myself, which I really don't like doing, but I'll give it a go. I'm Jan Farrell. I'm a professional ski racer. I race the Speed Ski World Cup. It's a discipline we ski above 200 kilometers per hour. I've skied at 231 kilometers per hour myself. I'm 7th in the world right now. It's a sport which is fascinating. I invite you to watch it on YouTube. We accelerate 0 to 200 kilometers per hour in 8 seconds. I am also a CEO of a company I founded 18 years ago, which is a business process outsourcing for insurance companies. We basically repair mobile phones for insurance. I've also got a series of companies I've invested in, and I participate either at board level or advisor level. And I run my own family office, which invests in hardware startups. And I'm looking to change the technology of the future and be involved with it through these investments. We're here to talk about legal startups and legal tech. What is that? Why is it always this regulatory question coming up? What are the barriers of entry? Where are they? Our panel of experts includes Natalia from Legal Army, Immaculada from Pinsett Mansons, and moderated by Paula Pastor from Point 9 Capital. A warm welcome to our panel this afternoon. A big round of applause, please.
So hi, everybody. A very warm welcome to our panel, in which we will be speaking about the hurdles that nobody speaks about when building legal tech tools. So as a mean of introducing myself, my name is Paula. I'm working in Point 9 Capital, a Berlin-based VC fund. I take care of the legal matters and operations as well. And yeah, so due to that, I, of course, deal with some of our legal tech portfolio. We count with amazing investments like Clio, Dona, Quinoa, or Juro. But yeah, well, let's focus on the purpose of this panel. So we want to share our experiences and our pain points when we were facing legal tools across our different roles. And I realized that most of the times, founders struggle a lot when identifying the public, like, what should I go to, a big law firm, a new law firm? Should I go to the back office, admin? Should I go to secretaries? But well, so we will be talking about this now. So we could not have had better speakers for that, I would say. So here is Natalia. Natalia has over 18 years of experience in 20, the Prisa Group, and Perez Llorca. And now she's the founder of Legal Army. They are killing it on the new law sector. It's an alternative legal service provider, and she will be explaining us a little bit more about this. This is Inma. Inma has over 15 years of experience across very prestigious law firms in Spain. Right now, she's a partner at Pinsent Masons, and Pinsent Masons has been ranked as one of the most innovative law firms in Europe due to the efforts on implementing legal tools. But just to put you in context, 2018 was a great year for investments in legal tech with $1 billion USD. 2019 is there as well with 1.2 billion at the end of Q3 more or less, and the busiest quarter is still ahead of us, so looks quite promising, right? So Natalia, I remember one of the first discussions we had was like, okay, oh, this tool is great, but it's taking away from me the funniest part of my job. So the ideal legal tech tool should be the one that is doing what lawyers don't want to do. And I think this is something that you guys at Legal Army are really focusing on it very much. So could you please explain us a little bit what's new law and like the kind of tools you guys use?
Yes, sure. New law is any model, any process, or any tool which delivers legal services in a different way than a traditional law firm. So new law is different for many, many other reasons and many aspects. For instance, we are in Legal Army, we are a corporation, we are not a lawyers' partnership. So you can find lawyers working in an environment with no tournament between the lawyers, fighting between them in an up or out system, because you find a horizontal structure instead of pyramid structure. Another important thing is that we try to give to the employees this work-life balance, because it's really, really important for us. Another very important thing is that we're providing technology in order to delete, in order to erase all the repetitive processes, in order to avoid all the administrative work, because for us it's very important to put the lawyer in the center. And the lawyer only should work where he or she can put or can give an added value. So if you sum all those items, this is a new law. And as a consequence of those items, you can offer transparency in the fees and fixed prices always. And regarding to the tools, yes, we are looking for tools for creating repositories of legal documents or many other questions or requests, legal opinions, etc. And we are also looking for platforms for collaborating with our clients in a different way, for changing how we collaborate with our clients.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because actually, I mean, we have the example of Carta, right, with the 300 million round, quite impressive. So it's like actually, sometimes for certain law firms, it's much better to have a simple tech rather than a legal tech per se. But I think, Inma, probably your experience is a little bit different. From this, I'm aware that in Pinsent Masons, you use tools for due diligence, which is one of the, like, it's a nightmare for lawyers. I don't know if there are any lawyer in the public, but I can tell you it's a nightmare. So I think this is very interesting if you could share your experience with this.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. Yeah, in Pinsent Masons, I mean, we combine technology which we buy or adapt from external providers and other technology that we create with our own engineers. One of the tools that we are most proud of is Termframe ERA, which is a software created by our lawyers, our real estate lawyers, when they did not have too much work during the last economic crisis, along with the engineers we have in-house. Is a software based on data analytics to do due diligence of a massive documentation through an artificial intelligence software. It basically once codified the questions that the client wants to know. I mean, if the document or if the contract is assignable or not, or which is the jurisdiction which is subject to which is subject the contract, or the legislation to which is the law which to which is subject the contract, or things like that a client normally seeks for in a due diligence. It creates clusters, and then it extracts data from this contract. So based on data analytics, and once codified, it can review loads of documents, massive amounts of documents in a very quick time. In fact, we succeeded in a pitch because we could review all the documents and not just a sample in a very short, with a very short deadline, which was impossible for other law firms to do. And on the other side, it reduced also the human error or the human mistake, because when we think about due diligence made by lawyers, we think about, I mean, a bunch of junior lawyers reviewing documents at night hours, so not very experienced. Whereas the machine, I mean, does it automatically. One of the most significant things is that one client hired us to do this review, and along another law firm to carry out the review with lawyers. And whereas the law firm which carried out the review with lawyers did maybe a 20% mistake, our software just a 2% mistake. I mean, it was quite different and quite efficient.
I mean, it's quite impressive. At the same time, it's a little bit sad, but I mean, let's not think in that way, in the sense of, for example, I don't know, tools destroying employment, because I don't think it's the case, right? Like, I think, especially in in-house, which would be more or less the part I'm more used to, because we do in-house ourselves at Point 9, I think we work a little bit like a small law firm. And I think in Legal Army it's completely the case, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you have been exploring and trying to analyze the market of legal tech tools for the past years, and this led you to the conclusion that you have to develop proprietary tech yourself, right? So I don't know, like, could you please tell us your experience a little bit on this, and also what would you have liked to find in the market at that time?
Yeah, sure. Well, we have been doing our research for years, and we have studied tools from the US, UK, Israel, Sweden, and I reached the same conclusion. All the tools are done in English language.
Yeah.
So we have this barrier, this limitation, and this is very important, because if we want to conquer the Spanish language market, it's impossible with these kinds of tools. So this is the first thing that I would like to remark. So it's an important limitation. And regarding to a tool that we will have loved to found in the past, when I was a lawyer in-house, in Prisa or in 20, or even when I was a practitioner in Perez Yorca, I would have loved to found a repository of documents, the famous KM, knowledge management, with all the contracts duly labeled, very structured. I would love that. So I'm trying to find something related to this. And regarding to, I think it's important to mention the main features that we have been looking in all those tools that we have been researching all those years. We have been looking for tools with an easy integration also in the law firm, but also with the client. And at the same time, those tools have to be adopted by the client. And sometimes it's complicated because the client is used to working in one way, and sometimes this is another complication for them. So for us, a good tool is a tool designed with UX, UI, with an excellent analysis of the experience, very simple, very quick, and that resolves the pain, really resolves the pain, because you have the risk in some moments when you go to your client that he says, okay, another platform, another system. So you need to find something very, very easy, very, very usable. It's something like an Apple, no? Like an iPhone. So that's it.
Yeah, very interesting. So, I mean, I think when you have your own proprietary tech, of course, implementing it comes very, very fast. And because of Legal Army works as an internal law firm, in-house, as we said, probably it's easier. But I would like a bit of your insights, Inma, on how easy or difficult is to implement tools like that. Because, for example, I mean, from my own experience, whenever we have founders pitching at Point 9, I think this is one of their main concerns. Like, is this going to take forever? How the due diligence is going to be? Or like, I don't know, if you would have any advice for founders in this sense, what would you say?
I mean, always what we recommend is to, first of all, to the clients, and we advise many clients to digitize its legal in-house legal counsel, to, first of all, think of the big picture. I mean, make the whole strategy. Where do I want to go? And think about, which are the parts where lawyers add less value, and which are the most repetitive parts, and which can be easily implemented. And so first of all, have the big pictures, and then you can find helpers in that. But also combine it with quick wins, so everyone feels comfortable to achieve milestones, because otherwise it becomes quite painful, and it's true that the result is not immediately. On the other side, you need to have the board on board. I mean, you need to have the management of the company or the management of the law firm completely convinced about that, because it's something that it will give you not ROI immediately, and it's a legal cost, and it's, I mean, you need money to implement this change, and maybe some escalation of costs. But if you have the management on board, and if you have quick wins that convince the management that everything is going well, you will be able to succeed.
So Natalia, I think it's very interesting, and it's a very trendy topic nowadays. More in 2018, but still I would like to ask you, like, briefly, like, how important it is to build a tech tool, a legal tech tool that is GDPR compliant, because this is something everybody asks themselves. It's a bit on the cloud, but I think it's very important to have just a couple of hints on this.
Well, I think it's more simpler than you think,
Okay.
because everybody thinks that this is a pain, a real pain.
Scary.
But I know a trick, okay? So this is the first time with the GDPR in full compliance, when the lawyers specialize in privacy, in GDPR, in privacy, they are working very close together with the product managers, with the technical teams, the engineers, because if they work together in a collaboration and they implement the privacy by design principle, even when you are making the ideation, before you make any kind of MVP, of any kind of mock-up, you are trying to think aligned with the DPO. I can assure you that your product, your idea, your tool will be fully compliant with the GDPR. And there is more, because you're going to get an advantage, a competitive advantage. Because if you know very, very well the GDPR, you can know how to fit, how to be compliant, and how to do it perfectly. So,
Thank you very much. Happy with that answer, I have to say. And just to wrap up, I think you pointed out something super interesting, Natalia, that normally customers, like, they just have their checklist on their brain. They should be made this way, that way, with these deadlines. But Inma, like, who do you think is more reluctant to these legal tech tools? Like, from your own experience, is the lawyers, is the customers, is the clients, like, is the junior lawyer itself? Like, what's your insights on this?
Or maybe both. I mean, maybe. I mean, we are all.
Yeah.
We are all are. Well, at some point reluctant, and we need to bring. I mean, in law firms, we need to bring in people with different skills, with different mindset. I mean, willing to render the services in a different way, willing to push the boundaries in that part of rendering the services, and not doing the same thing as they have already done, and they are very well. And they are very good at that point. And on the other side, and that means not only bringing lawyers with a different mindset and very active and innovators, and so it also means bringing in engineers. I mean, I think it's and we in Pins and Masons think that it is it has ended the time where law firms were only made by lawyers. I mean, we need to bring in engineers also. And it has happened also, for instance, in medicine, where mathematicians or data analytics, I mean, have been incorporated to the companies, and they have been able to make better diagnosis and algorithms that help them in that. So law firms need to think the same. I mean, we need to bring in people with different skills. And on the other side, I mean, customers are used to a way of receiving the services. In Spain, there is a very mature market of law services, and and customers are normally comfortable with their lawyers. So we need to bring them some added value in the services we render. We need to show them that it will be more efficient, and of course, at the end, customer always has the right. So if they want their paper in the same way, we need to be able to render the services like that. We cannot push someone to receive something that they don't want. But at the end, I mean, we will succeed in that, and things change. Because when I started, I am an M&A lawyer, and when I started working, we did the due diligence, for instance, going to the company and reviewing documentation in the company, and all together, like in a campsite inside the company. And I cannot think a customer where it is told that a bunch of lawyers will go to his company right now. I mean, he will be absolutely scared. I mean, we are all used to online data rooms. And so, I mean, things change slowly, but they change. And at the end, I mean, it's different how it was and how it is.
And Natalia, do you think, in line with what Inma is saying, do you think this is a matter of culture, or is just because the market is not mature enough, there are inefficiencies? Just briefly on the top of your head, like.
I think it's a mix of both.
Okay.
Because Spain has a different culture. Spain is different, I was to say. It's different, absolutely.
It's
Yes,
different,
it is indeed. And no, it is real, because I've been studying the North American market and the UK market, and they are growing very, very fast. And you can find many legal tech tools for doing contracts, for due diligence, for any kind of invention that you can imagine. So in Spain, we're always the last. You are waiting until the last minute for making the change or for making the shift to the other business model. But this is how it is.
Germany is not very far away from that. No, I don't think so. It's super bureaucratic, super slow. Like, everybody's very skeptical about it, but I think it's just, as you said, it's about maybe a cultural factor, or maybe about, I don't know how the market works, but
I thought that Axiom Law, they were established in Germany,
yeah,
for
in Frankfurt,
instance.
yeah.
And they decided not to come to Spain, so there is a hope.
But it's legal army here, so.
Yeah, but in Spanish language only. From now,
From
by
now,
the moment.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you very, very much for your time, for both of you. I know you are very busy, so I really appreciate that you took the time to be here and share your experience with the public. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you very much. Very, very interesting, extremely down to the point, and very much on time. Thank you. Next up, we are going to discuss the barriers and opportunities for entrepreneurs in the new legal landscape. This is going to be moderated by Javier de Cendra from the IE Law School. And we have a great panel, including Ignacio Longarte from Det3, Javier Pascual from CYSAE, and his colleague Antonio Vázquez. We also count on Gonzalo García Valdecasas from Écija, Daniel Morón from Hogan Lovells, Jorge Cerdio from ITAM. So a big round of applause for our panel. I think they're still getting ready, so maybe we don't need to applaud until they appear. I've been talking to them in the backstage. It's very interesting where legal tech is going. Is legal tech something which is going to be in every lawyer's life? Is it something which is coming from outside and being imposed? I find from my experience with law in my companies that technology is necessary and not present enough for our everyday needs. There are things that I think we could do without face-to-face meetings, with sitting down with my lawyer, and they should be giving me mechanisms which I can use for contracts, for our everyday needs, which could be facilitated by technology. I'm not sure if our panel behind us agrees with me, but legal tech is probably going to be in every lawyer's life. It's just a question of time. So a warm welcome, and thank you for being here.
Aquí? Okay.
Falta alguien, ¿no?
Vale.
Ignacio. Ignacio tiene que presentar.
So, what do we do? Do we start or do we wait a bit?
Sí, podía
Bien.
como sabéis que la queréis esperar a los otros que vienen.
Antonio.
Pregúntale.
Esperamos, ¿sí? Esperamos, empezamos.
Si quieres, esperamos 5 minutos.
Ok, esperamos. Les damos un minuto o dos, si quieres. ¿Saben?
I don't need your reasons. Don't tell me 'cause it hurts. Our memories, they can be invited.
Two more panelists. They probably are about to arrive, but maybe we can just get started, right? And they will just join. Okay, so without further ado, we want to really take advantage of this panel to make an analysis, a radiography of legal tech entrepreneurship in Spain, but not just in Spain in a broader context, right? So allow me to use a couple of examples as my starting points. We know that entrepreneurship in Spain is really, and technology-based entrepreneurship is growing very quickly in recent years, but we also know that legal tech startups are not growing so quickly, and we understand that there are many barriers for that. But if we look abroad to some specific jurisdictions, which are very different to Spain, no doubt about that. For instance, Israel or Singapore. What do we find? We find Israel that is called itself and is known to be a startup nation. And I was just there last week, and what I've seen is that legal tech is just exploding in Israel, but with some very specific characteristics. Legal tech startups born in Israel are not serving the Israel market, they are mainly serving the USA markets, because the Israeli market is very small. Now, this is interesting, I think, because Israel has taken as a nationwide policy at the highest priority to promote entrepreneurship at many levels, of course, the startup nation, but especially in the legal industry. They want to be leaders globally, and they prepare their startups to be global leaders. Now, why can they do that? For one, because, as you know, Israel invests around 6% of its GDP into technological developments for defense, for military defense. And a lot of the developments are then used for civil purposes. Second of all, military service is compulsory, with some very few exceptions, for every single male in Israel, meaning that for 3 years, many people get training in technology, in highly sophisticated technological solutions for the military that then can be put to civil services. And they have the technology, they have the support from the states, and they look abroad. Why do they look abroad and not domestically? It is my understanding that there are some reasons that have to do with the particular geography of Israel. To start with, it's a very small market, 8 million people scattered in the middle of a highly deserted area with just 2 big cities, and very few firms that can really become clients of those startups. And also, they cannot really trade with the neighbors. There's no trade in the regions, so they need to trade with other jurisdictions, other countries, and especially with the USA. There is a privileged relationship. So you have a number of reasons, I would say, that lead Israel to be a startup nation, also in legal tech. And Singapore has made one of the key strategies of its government to become a leading global hub for the practice of legal services. If you know the Singapore Law Academy, through the FLIP program, is offering almost free training to all the lawyers in the region so that they can have the cutting-edge technologies to be competing at an advantage against other law firms. And they are really doing that with a publicly oriented, publicly funded strategy. So, by way of context, these are 2 examples we can look at. And now, knowing that Spain is very differently, my first question is, how do you see the ecosystem for entrepreneurship, and particularly for legal tech and entrepreneurship in Spain? Do you feel legal tech is growing up to its potential, is finding many barriers? What are your views? And I want this to be an open conversation, so I'm not going to follow any particular order. Who wants to comment first?
So I think that's the moment for the entrepreneurship here in Spain, because we are in the incubators stage. Any entrepreneurship will stay in the moment at all the law firms are looking for talent, are looking for new ways doing things. So things are changing in the legal sector, and this is the way that entrepreneurships look for new opportunities in our sector. So I think this is the moment for the entrepreneurs to be alert and to be with all the knowledge prepared to develop new tools and new technologies for the law firms industry.
Do you have any other views? Or, yeah.
And I think, Javier, do you hear me? Yeah. I think, Javier, this is also a question of state policy and country strategy. So first, I mean, before talking about legal tech, the reality is that, well, my perception is that we are not implementing the structural reforms or the virtuous structural approach that other countries are doing. And in my perspective, we are late. We are quite late. And that is going to affect us significantly. I think if we don't resolve this as a country in 10, 15 years, we're going to have serious issues that are bottom line issues for the country. And if we move that to legal tech and how to do entrepreneurship and how to innovate in legal tech, what I see is it's a mixed approach, but I don't see yet that structural approach also in legal tech. I see that some firms or companies are considering this kind of, well, this is interesting. It would be good to raise and to publish some brochures with nice digital buzzwords and innovation, entrepreneurship, we support, blah, blah, blah. But I don't see a core structural approach that is really transforming the operating model of the firms or the legal departments. And I think this is also a challenge because, or it's difficult because in most of the cases, their customers, which is the internal customer or a multinational, they are themselves suffering in doing this transformation. So if in legal tech and in the legal function, we don't take the speed to innovate at the same level and with the same blood that they are living in the plate, I think we're gonna suffer. So we need to speed up. And some of the initiatives that you're taking forward, we can talk about later, I think are very ideal for it.
Yeah. Can I say something? Yeah. Perhaps from the outside, you know, I'm from Mexico, but I've been taking part for the past 10 years in working technology with a publisher, a Spanish publisher in law, Tirando Blanc, and they have developed progressively around every 3 years from public funding, different technologies for them. So my impression is that while the funding is there to develop and to do research, the idea of entering into that project is not itself part of the legal mindset of law firms. I mean, if a publisher can do that and obtain public funding, then perhaps large law firms can do that all the same. And not because a publisher is more equipped in terms of technology, because it's a very small development team that they have in-house. I would wonder to say that legal law firms, large law firms in Spain, do have a larger in-house tech department to do that. But it's about the mindset, not so much about the ecosystem that doesn't have the resources. That said, there's not a public policy like there is in Israel or Singapore. That's it, right? But I think it's not a matter of the availability of the funding, but of the mindset of legal in-house lawyers and law firms at large, from an external point of view, right?
Okay, so following up on that, and of course you feel free to comment on the previous question, but what is your view then, you know, having mapped the field and seen what exists, but also the barriers to scale, what are the best opportunities you can find now in the market for technology to improve the actual delivery of legal services, spaces in which new innovative legal tech startups could actually find a way to scale quickly? Do you see that? Do you see those spaces, and which ones are those in your view? Yeah.
Well, I'm Javier. Sorry I got late. I'm sorry. Javier Pascual from CISA. Thank you, Javier, for the presentation and the summit. Just one point regarding the first question. I think it's not a problem of the ecosystem, like administration or public policies, but what you've said, that the legal actors, the legal stakeholders, mainly lawyers, they don't want, I think, in my opinion, and I'm watching this with our tool. We have a tool that digitalizes the societies to, well, to vote and legal stakeholders meetings and etc. And the problem is that they don't want a tool that is going to do what they do. Okay, right. So the main problem is to find a legal firm that wants to start using a tool that probably is going to make that they have to fire people. You know, I think that's the main problem. Or the existence of a pure automatized IA tool that makes 100% the job of a lawyer, that this doesn't exist. Okay, yeah. So the problem is that lawyers want to go, what we say in Spanish, in the top of the whale of the legal tech. Huh? And regarding the second question, I think it's basically an area where it's easy for lawyers to start using this technology, not passing from white to black. For example, our tool, and I don't want to sell anything here, it's easy for lawyers. Like the tool is made for lawyers, to make easier their job. But from white to black, give them a tool that it's totally new, someone that it's been 40 years doing the same process, right. It's impossible.
But yes. Perhaps at the same time, a topic that is rarely treated in terms of legal tech entrepreneurship is how can we not only better market the product, but create the training for lawyers to consume that product. Sometimes even if you have a very good user experience interface, a very well-designed interface, that doesn't do it. In order to fill the gap of the transition between a traditional workload of a lawyer into a technological workload, you need to retrain, to upskill the lawyer in terms of not merely knowing the tool, but incorporating it in a more efficient way in every day. So we need to start talking about how can we better also train along with marketing and merchandising our products in terms of legal tech.
Any other comment on this point? Because we are seeing a landscape that doesn't seem to be very promising yet for the explosion of, let's say, investments into legal tech. So I know, and perhaps is one specific way in which the legal industry in Spain is trying to nurture early stage innovation in this field, is by having law firms creating spaces, for instance, where they can explore with some startups, integrate them into the culture of the firm and try to work towards the change of that culture and the training. First of all, can you elaborate a little bit more on that particular strategy to promote early stage innovation? What are the limits of that? And are there any other approaches that you see here or abroad that could be more effective in terms of transforming at a scale legal industry?
In my opinion, we have experience watching this kind of hubs in law firms and all that this stuff. But in these situations, we see that the solutions that they want to set up, they are more or more specialized to this firm. We are seeing lawyers in big law firms as we done like 2 years ago, and they know the sector, they know the specialization like commercial law, and they know how it works, and then they know how to improve it using technology. So I think the most useful tool for improving this area is the lawyers that know how to work in this sector. They need to start feeling confident in using technology because they are going to automatize procedures and they are going to be more efficient. I think that's the point.
And I think that anything that sponsor entrepreneurship, intra-firm, and so on is very positive. So that is good, no? Also, where I see some firms struggling, it is in identifying the specific use cases that could deliver a right solution that at the end can be monetized and can be structurally integrated into the pipeline of the firm, no? And in that angle, something that could be interesting to explore it is to educate and form the senior people of these firms, because normally they are the key decision makers and not the staff, to really have a bath of technology, but that's completely necessary. I mean, maybe, and this is what I have experienced in the past, is that in some cases the senior partners, they are kind of saying, well, it's 5 years to retirement, so I don't want to enter into this. And then the firm gets slower, slow down. And what it would be interesting is maybe the second top management layer, or almost the ones that still can, just risk budget and take decisions, educate them in artificial intelligence, big data, natural language processing, so they are able to understand that machine learning is not the same. It's not just artificial intelligence; it's a segment of it, and then deep learning is a different thing, and so on. Because if they are experts in their field, but they are also able to understand these key dynamics in the market, they are better formed to take those decisions and risk.
How far are we from there, in your view?
I think we still have way to go, and we should go much faster.
Yeah, Javier, in the legal area, in my humble experience, the MVP, for example, you want to create a cup of tea, really cool, whatever. You can start with an MVP that you can fill it with tea, and you can drink, and that's an MVP.
Yeah.
But in the legal area, the MVP has to be perfect.
Right.
I mean, there's no chance for any mistake. If a lawyer sees any mistake, we need perfection. I mean, we are lawyers, okay? And that's a very big problem. I mean, at the beginning, with this tool, I mean, this is our experience, no? One of our partners, he was like a really commercial, no? He came from the from marketing area and start selling with the MVP, show whatever, and zero clients, no? minus 10.
Do you agree with this view? You had some.
It's a question of educating the customer and setting the expectations at the right level also.
In our experience in Hoga Lovells, that's perfect because we are celebrating or hosting some kind of events like the Innovation Tech Hub in Munich that entrepreneurs face the reality of the law firms. So they detect the real needs that the lawyers are demanding on the law firm industry. So sometimes it's not only the problem from the law firms, sometimes it's the problem for the entrepreneurs, and our recommendation is all the time we receive some package very close that is the product finalized. This kind of hackathons and events on legal tech help the entrepreneur to know in the first person about the really needs about the law firm. So I think this is a very useful issue because in this kind of MVP product or agile or innovation lean startup that we are moving, this is a way that lawyers and entrepreneurs has to move together and move forward.
Okay, so and related to that, I have a question I cannot resist to make, because you are talking about and you were talking, Jorge, and you were, I think, agreeing with that, the cultural barrier that we are facing, right? You're saying it's important to train seniors. I doubt myself, I'm not the moderator, but I doubt to what extent it is possible to train very senior lawyers in big law firms, because it is difficult. They already have their career built and so on and so forth. You might have to wait for the next generations, and especially what is critical is that the new leaders, the new generations joining those law firms are really well versed into the specific advantages that technology has for the practice of the law, right? So that leads me to the question of the role that you think law schools have in facilitating this conversation between the lawyers, the more senior ones, the entrepreneurs, the future generations, and the existing generations at the top of the law firms. What do you think law schools should be doing? What do you think they are doing in fact? And you can be here quite candid in that. Let me start with Jorge, because he's the dean of a law school. So probably he can talk from direct experience. Jorge, what?
There's one obvious role, which is to create within the curricula this DNA of legal tech. That is to insert within the DNA of the law school's curricula the idea that the law services can be embedded in legal lawyering with technology flavor. That's one of the things that's quite obvious. But I think that the second and third thing that are not that obvious is that you mentioned new schemes to bring about technology and innovation to law firms. And I think you were thinking about the forms, the farming model, where law firms can bring to the law school a legal problem that can be translated into a technological solution, so it can be quasi-mature within the law schools at the clinical level. That is to have, at the law schools, the idea of students partaking into real-life problems, like you said, in the flesh, so they can see how technology can be paired with the legal services within the law school. And I think the third role would be to provide, let me put it this way, a consumer's guide, a consumer report of legal tech for the legal services market. That is, you have pointed out that you need to, it is not realistic perhaps to re-educate the partners so they can take the leadership. Okay, but what about law schools? What about law schools providing information, disseminating information about what is the state of the art in terms of legal tech? And to do that as part of the executive education or as part of the everyday communication with the legal services market. This is something that law schools rarely face, but I think they should be doing this. That is to provide them with an educated guess to the law firms as to where to point out to better solutions.
What is your view about this? Do you think law schools should be playing that role? Do you think they are playing it? Do they have the capacity to play it? You all are more or less engaged into teaching in university.
You're in IE, you are doing a big effort on that because we are assisting to the Law Ahead Hub that you are celebrating every month. So I think this is the role of the law business school, to create spaces where really needs and entrepreneurs can join together and establish collaboration between the law firms and the projects. So I think this is the way to move forward, because hackathons, events, legal techs, your initiative, that's moving and proposing some common spaces where all together we can face different problems.
Actually, here we have an example of this, because we all three came from the EI, from the first masters specialized in legal tech. And when we were like 6 months in our internship, we decided to set up a company. And now we are like half a year working on that. We are very small yet, but we think we are watching that everyone in the sector, they are they want to see what we're doing, because we are innovating. We want to go to a new step, a new law. Now it's called like this, new law or legal tech, and we are improving the legal sector, I think. Because
but wouldn't you say that new vision that this master provided would it be provided at the LLB level, at the bachelor's level? Wouldn't you say that we could go a step further and to insert that vision at the student and the undergraduate students level, for them to realize that technology can and should work par-to-par with legal services, and to have this innovation DNA within their vision of the legal services? Wouldn't you say that that's possible?
Yeah, it is, of course.
I think that's precisely the problem, at least in Spain. I mean, I finished university some years ago, but my little brother is still in the same university. I'm not going to say the name, no? But I mean, zero subjects in nothing related with legal tech or innovation. And I think that the reason is that universities, mainly public universities, the people that work there, they've been a lot of years. They have to make an exam. There's a hierarchy, a hierarchy. So I think it's more complicated to start changing, like suddenly the itinerary of subjects in LLMs or in masters is much more agile. And if you are one of, it's the truth, no? Like one of the first or the second master in law in IE, of course, probably it's going to be the best. And the proof is that we've done it, and 6 months later we created this firm that for the moment it's fine, no? And then another step, I mean, university, master, LLM, and then when you are working, no, in the firms. So maybe they should, in universities and in the firms, start like making a studental labor there. No?
So this question is for everyone, but especially for you. When you look at your markets, potential markets, do you look just to Spain, or do you think some of the products you have in mind, or other startups in Spain have in mind, could be optimized so that from the beginning they can serve in other jurisdictions, maybe in Latin America, for instance? What is your market? I was talking about Israel, focusing abroad. What is your market? And what do you think is the market of legal tech startups in Spain? Can they, reasonably speaking, think bigger than Spain or not? What is going on in that field?
Yeah, I think when we started, we didn't have any customer from abroad. But now we are seeing that, for example, companies from Asia, they are coming here just in order to create, because in Spain, I think the fintech sector is getting bigger, and we can see it in the startups that they are in the South Summit. And we've seen that we can give our services, but specialize in the legal Spanish sector. We cannot give another, because we are lawyers and we only have this jurisdiction, and we are specialized only in the Spanish sector. But we are watching that many companies from abroad, they want to come to Spain because they consider Spain as a safe country in order to set up a fintech company, or for example, another example is the GDPR, the new regulation. We see that companies from all abroad, they want to have the European regulation because it's safer than other regulations. So in this sense, we are having like customers from abroad.
But can I just add something? Yes. It is interesting to notice that in the past panel, I think it was the CEO from Legal Army, said that she spent around 3 years surveying different technologies and found or arrived at the conclusion that they had to produce their own technology, to do an in-house development, mainly because of the language barrier. So I think this signals a great opportunity for innovators in Spain to become a beacon of innovation for Latin America, for example, right? I mean, for every which jurisdiction, which Spanish is the official language to work with. Because of what Legal Army said, right? That the other alternative is quite costly, which is to self-develop the tool. But if you have an ecosystem of legal tech entrepreneurship in Spanish, that could be an exportable product all the way.
And there's something, Jorge, that you were pointing out before, which is the mindset change. We need to support ourselves. I see sometimes in the market, and when we consider all these tools and how to approach this, the strategy, that when some people see a kind of American or Anglo-Saxon solution, the starting point, it is a little bit higher than kind of a local solution and so on. We need to trust in ourselves. We need to trust in our people. We need to back ourselves. I always say, I explained the example, I lived in Switzerland for a few years. I was always traveling, but I had the opportunity to work with many clients there in Switzerland. Interestingly, 85–90% of the coffee machines that they had in every company, it was a local trademark that is very known and famous. And they loved the Italian coffee and the Italians for everything. But they were saying, equal conditions, we buy the Swiss machine. And that helps the company, and then they can start a scale and so on. So first, we need to change that culture, that mindset, and that comes from above. And later, part of the risk of enabling a very kind of American-oriented approach, it is that, or Anglo-Saxon or foreign, it is that detailed solutions that could be scaled, and those are the ones interested in for any firm and so on, are going to become vertical solutions. And when they work and finally they clinch and they are adopted and there's the curve of escalation, if we are not, as a country or as our countries, if we are not leading those verticals, others from abroad will come and take that vertical, and that's an issue because our teams and our people would have less capacity to innovate and do entrepreneurship there. So that's, I think we need to also consider that. We need to change that mindset. It is very, very important.
Daniel, I want to ask you specifically because you also have this European-wide approach, and if we focus just on Europe, you can compare the evolution of legal tech across different countries or member states of the European Union, if you want. You know, what would you say are the best countries, if we can talk in those terms, in terms of promoting legal tech, or at least in terms of eliminating the barriers for these early stage startups to test themselves? Who do we need to look at? Is it the UK? Is it Germany? Is it the Netherlands? And why?
In my experience, is Germany, of course, because they are promoting this kind of common spaces that are the key for the encounter between talent, knowledge, and real needs. Of course, I completely agree with Ignacio that we have to believe in ourselves, in our Spain way of doing things, and on the resolutive skills that we have face the other nationalities in Europe. But we have some kind of resolutive things in this kind of minimum viable product, agile, innovative learning that is in our Spanish core. So we have to take advantage of these ability skills to promote and to create. Obviously, the barriers of financials, ecosystems, low schools are helping on that issue. But from my experience, Germany is doing things quite well.
Is that so? I think it's interesting to explore that a little bit more. Is that, you know, if I think in Germany, it's not that I see enormous differences in respect to other advanced European states, other than probably the size of the markets. You know, you have German for 80 million people, a huge market, very wealthy, very internationally oriented, of course, and that probably gives more opportunities for to scale. But I'm just wondering, because the Netherlands...
Of course, this is one of the reasons, but another is that they believe in the results that they obtain from young entrepreneurships that came to the law firms, to this hackathon or this event. So, of course, we have to give the opportunity, but we have to transform this kind of opportunities in real products to incorporate in our firms.
Any one of you perhaps has views about Switzerland or any other member state? What do you think? Is it the size? Is it the ecosystem? And if so, why is the ecosystem more advanced?
Switzerland that's a good question, Javier, because Switzerland is like Israel, 8 million people, 25 experts, but the DNA of innovation is very, very inside and from the school, from schooling when they are 8 and 9 years old. And then they grow with it, and that's, I think, the same now in Israel. That changed tremendously. In Germany, I think it's the same. You're right, but still, I see many things, interesting articles from German initiatives that are very innovative and so on. But they are still in German, and they haven't translated them to English or taken the effort in doing that. So they can sometimes they are kind of they have the innovation culture also from the automotive and so on, and And that's still an opportunity. When we control the language of the regulation, we can still innovate. If not, what I see in other markets that is interesting is, for instance, in the UK, is there is a cross-pollination between the developments in AI or startups in other segments, medical, healthcare, blockchain, and so on, and then they are exported into legal tech, and then they go a little bit faster. That we don't have that, unfortunately, yet here, and that's an issue because of the cannibalization of the future verticals. And for instance, if we don't do that, I know there's a European unicorn that is working in RPA and robotics process automation. It's one of the few European companies, but they're very good in what they do. So they maybe are not focusing in legal tech yet, but in the moment that this is the risk for some, for the profession, that if we don't take the ownership of our data, our skills, and others will do it. And I think that's your organization and initiatives like the lab and the hub, where all these disciplines spend quality time together. I think that's the key, quality time together. Every time that I've been able to take to the market something interesting as a product in a multinational advisory firm and so on, it has been when different verticals were working together, but not from time to time, consistently. And that's difficult. That is not happening as often as it should.
Yeah, I have the same experience in running these global legal tech venture days, of seeing how what we can call legal exceptionalism or legal tech exceptionalism is not really such. There are many corporations that that are developing solutions for other verticals that could be adapted with an additional layer for the legal sector. If they are not doing it yet, it's because they don't see the possibility to scale. They see too much, a very reactive approach, a lot of fragmentation. There is not just enough reasons to invest at the scale. Sure. But exactly. But that exceptionalism maybe is one reason that explains the slowness to uptake or to promote entrepreneurship. Somehow the legal industry feels a little bit insulated from others, right? Do you see that? Do you agree with that?
We've seen basically that in our experience. In fact, last week or a couple of weeks ago, we had a meeting with a guy from Ecuador, an ex-student of the master, one of the good things about the master, that you can meet people from all parts of the world. And he wanted to start commercializing this tool in Ecuador. No? But he said that the regulation was different. Okay? And this kind of area, like board meetings and shareholders meeting, it's really ABC. I mean, you call a meeting, you vote, you write the certificate, the minutes, yeah, and that's it. But, for example, in Ecuador, he said that it's obligatory to record the meetings, and we didn't have this tool for every meeting. That's one thing that changes from one regulation to another one. Then all the documentation has to be different. And I mean, this was a 30 minutes meeting. Probably if we went there, we could realize that we would need 6 months of new development. Yeah. So each country, Europe maybe is more similar, but no, each country is different.
I want to ask you, I think as I see that we are coming towards the end, and perhaps there's some question from the audience at the end. I want to ask you to provide sharp and short recommendations for legal tech startups that, given these circumstances, want still to give it a try, to raise capital, to develop their products. What areas do you really think are more promising and face less barriers? If you can each name one or two where you really think this is the next step in terms of attracting clients and attracting investments. Ignacio.
For me, clearly the number one, and I evangelize many on it, it is data rights. If you ask me one, data rights. I have 3 or 4 more, but yeah.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, the point is, in the way innovation happens nowadays, you could have the best hardware, you could have the best software or algorithm, but if you don't have the right data to feed that process in the right moment and with the right rights, what I call the kind of green data, which is a data that nobody can question and so on, and know that data is something dynamic that is always changing, and it can be moved in 1 second from one side of the world to the other. So you need to acquire or create the data, you need to protect it, you need to govern it, and then most likely you're going to start to use it as, you're going to share it with other companies, sometimes in exchange of data and so on. So developing a strategy for data rights, what do you need to do as a company? And the legal sector has to help very much there, because it's an intangible asset, it's air. So we need to frame it with rights and law. That's the only way we can do it. So we need to participate there. And the other point about that, it is if we are going to start to exchange data from one industry, one segment to the others, to launch value propositions to the markets between big multinationals, startups, and so on, the value of data, there's interesting opportunities for a legal plus economic kind of approach to do a data valuation on a time form, and kind of, there's interesting elements there.
Anyone? What would you recommend?
Maybe, corporate law for sure. Maybe corporate law, that is our tool is focusing that, but not just because everything is paper, no? Because, for example, in the tribunals, you can see that paper is everywhere, no? So it's not the only area. But because the European Union is putting the focus in this area, then digitalizing the corporate law. For example, there's a new directive from May just for this, for the digitalization of corporate law. So that's good because it's not just for Spain, but for whole Europe.
For me, it's very important to focus on UX, no? And what we talk every day is about LX, lawyer experience, is a very different user about software, and deep learning is for me the next step about legal tech. In order to take a lot of documents, to analyze them and have results, is very, very important in all areas of law, deep learning.
A recommendation for entrepreneurs, we are in the place, is a tool that improves the communication between the lawyer and the client. So this is a big challenge. In Hogan, we are working in that initiative in the way that we approach the digital learning, the way that people approach to video skill bars, to micro-learning, to information at the moment of need, this kind of initiatives. That is a huge range to develop new tools and to improve the way that the lawyer approaches to the client, and the client, of course, communicate their needs to the firm, to the lawyer.
Yeah. I would say migrating interfaces. That is, to develop interfaces to migrate the traditional way the lawyers work into a digital environment. From contracts, clouds, computing, to automating due diligence. That is to think of the interfaces that will offer digital services, doing it in a traditional way.
Okay.
Well, and of course, smart contracts is a very nice way for lawyers to start to think as a programmer. That's a very good thing also.
Well, we're just out of time, so thank you so much for sticking to the time and for an interesting conversation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
She got Bette Davis eyes, she take her tumble on you.
Te dejo mi móvil para la foto. Sí.
Until you come out blue. She's got Bette Davis eyes. She'll expose
Thank you very much to our panel. It was most interesting. And next up, we have a discussion about intellectual property, revenue share, and other inflection points. Flown in today from Brussels, we have our star moderator from the European Commission, Luc Borg. And participating will be Clara Pombo from Clark Modet Jean-Yves Teda Mayart from Cuatro Casas, and Andy Ramos from Perez Llorca. They're just getting ready in the background, and we'll be listening to them shortly. I have to say that intellectual property in startups is very important, and I have experienced it many times in the past, and I will be listening on intently in the background. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. I hear myself, so you must be hearing me too. I'm very happy to be here with a very knowledgeable staff, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to not say anything as soon as possible to make sure that these experts that we brought today are here to explain everything about the essence of IPR and why it is really in the core of entrepreneurship, at least in tech entrepreneurship. It's very important to understand for you. Today we will have 3 angles of IPR, which all matter very much. One is, of course, the IPR in terms of value for investors. One is, of course, the IPR in terms of what does it mean for the team. And the third part is IPR, what does it mean for universities and why is it not floating a bit more easy? Who is going to say this? I'm going to say in a little bit. My name is Luc Borg. I've been in tech investment for 30 years. I've been looking for, let's say, a better tech investment, early stage investment already for at least 25 years. And I must say, my first experience in tech investment was in Silicon Valley. It was 25 years ago. And there were only people that were investing. There was no startups in Europe yet at that time. Well, there were, but it was very different than what it is today. And when I raised my hand to make a suggestion, they told me, shut up, stay out of this. This is not for governments. I still think that is true. I still think that startups is mostly about companies. And I must say that ever since I've always tried in the programs, in the policies of the European Commission, which I represent, to make it as much as possible a business for business and not for governments. That's very important, market. So we are here with a very knowledgeable crowd, a very knowledgeable team today. The first speaker that I would like to introduce is Jean-Yves Tendas. Well, they're all lawyers, but Jean-Yves Tendas is also a lawyer, a litigation lawyer, if you know what that is. But I think Jean-Yves is going to talk a little bit about what was it again? Oh yeah, the essence of IPR for startups, and not only for startups, but for the investors. That was the first angle, as you remember. The second angle is startup for the team. It means value sharing, also not just for the team, I guess also for the investors, as you just explained to me.
Yeah.
And this is Andy Ramos, he's also a lawyer. And the last speaker that we have is Clara Plombo, and she's also a lawyer in IPR, and she's going to look much more into open innovation in IPR. The question, why does this IPR that is developed in universities, why doesn't it float a little bit better to the market, and why is it not taken up? This is where we should go and put our attention on. Okay, again, I would like to introduce the first speaker. We only have half an hour, so I think we should have about 7-8 minutes per speaker, and also allow you to ask a few questions. Johnny.
Thank you very much, Luke, for the introduction. So when we are talking about startups, we talk about, at the end of the day, innovation. Such emerging companies are offering an attractive project, are offering ideas, originality, creativity. Thus, they have they have ways to protect those originality. However, what we have seen is that in most of the cases, it is recurring that those startups do not protect their IP portfolio, even they ignore any IP-related issue. So there's a current or a recent study conducted by a Harvard researcher that concludes that 75% of startups fail. Very often, the difference between expansion and extinction of a startup is related to the focus that they have put on the protection of their IP rights. So many times we see that those startups do not protect properly the IP rights. That's why I think it is important to here today that we have the chance to talk about this, make some points and stress on the importance that for the startups to protect their IP rights. For instance, those IP rights are important because 73% of startups that are protecting IP rights do have more investments from the investors. So very quickly, an overview on the most important ways to protect the IP rights. I'm going to make some highlights about the legal issues relating to the different ways. So first of all, we have the more traditional way to protect. We have the patents. So as you know, for inventions, products, or processes that meet 3 requirements. First of all, nullity. It's obvious. It's something that has not been disclosed, can be patented. Secondly, that it have an inventive activity, meaning that it solves a technical problem which had no solution so far. And finally, that has the one that has industrial application, meaning that it can be reproduced several times. So this protection gives or grants the title holders of an exclusivity right during a 20 years period. But it's true that only grants protection on the territories where such protection has been requested. Then what's a good alternative for startups would be, for sure, the so-called trade secrets. Trade secrets are the way for protecting any given information or knowledge that meets, again, 3 requirements. Secrecy, meaning that those secrets are not, or those information and knowledge are not known or generally known by the competitors. Second, that this information has in itself a great value, an economical value, actual or potential commercial value. And finally, that all reasonable measures have been adopted in order to keep those information as secret and remaining confidential before the rest of the market. So I think this is a good way to protect the most valuable assets of the startups, because it allows not to meet the patentability requirements, which very often happens. Additionally, it allows as well to startups to save all costs involved in the patent applications. And finally, if you do a good job, you can keep the right over those information or knowledge during all the time that you can keep this information secret. So I think it's a good way. Another example would be when the most important value of a startup lies on a software, we can as well protect that software through over copyright. Okay? In this connection, we have to take into account that copyright over a software does not protect the functionality of the software, only the way that such software is expressed through binary language, and take into account that as a general rule in copyright, the author or the title holder of the rights will be the author. However, as an exception to this, take into account that for software, the company is deemed to be the author of such software when the employee has developed such software within the scope of his/her activity and functions. And finally, why do not talk about databases? Databases, when the key of the analyzed business model is the use of big data. In those cases, what happens very often in the field of startups, in those cases we can protect as well such database as through the sui generis right foreseen in the Intellectual Property Act. No? So at the end of the day, there are many ways to protect. I think that a good suggestion, recommendation for startups is to be proactive, to take all necessary steps to protect their intellectual property rights, and do not fear costs, because of course there will be costs to assume, but those costs will not be so high than in the case that you do not take the appropriate actions. And finally, that do not fear either to engage an IP counsel to design an executive plan, an IP plan, and to execute it over time. So I think that the main points are these. The investors will very much appreciate this investment taken by the founders of a startup in protecting the IP rights, because it's not only you are increasing the value of the company, but is that you are giving them many confidence on what they are actually acquiring. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Is there one small, very quick question for Jean-Yves? If not, then I will go straight through to the next, Andy Ramos, to give his pitch, and I guess maybe there's some time at the end to do a bit of a discussion among the three of us. Andy, please.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation. And apologies for wearing a tie, because I think this is not a place to wear a tie, but in my defense, I would say it's a Star Wars tie. So it means that lawyers have to be geeks also in this industry, even if you are in the legal services industry. So obviously, when we are talking about digital economy on this digital economy era, every single company generates, develops a huge amount of intangible assets, including IPR, intellectual property rights, and data. That is the new goal. This roundtable is about intellectual property and the revenue share, how these companies that generate IPR get revenue. And when I was preparing my speech, I was thinking about three main means to obtain revenues when you are exploiting IPR. The first one is by selling your intellectual property rights via license or assignment. You don't have to know the difference. That's why lawyers are, to know the difference between a license and assignment of rights. Secondly, by exploiting a service that uses these intellectual property rights. For example, Netflix, for example, Spotify, they are very good services. Their real core is exploiting these rights. And the third one, and Jean-Louis anticipated it, by exploiting inside the company, using these assets, for example, trade secrets, to have a better position, a more competitive position in compared with other companies. So digital economy, it's about selling goods and services based on intangible assets. However, it's not easy. It's not always easy to get these revenues, especially when you don't have a business model very clear defined. For example, extremely successful companies like Spotify or Netflix are struggling very, very hard to try to find revenues and, well, to obtain profits and to get to black numbers. It's not always known that Spotify, until 2017, has been losing money, losing between $8 million and $200 million each year. Spotify, which is a huge sample of success in the digital economy. So they have been losing money, a lot of money, each year. So we can say, okay, they are not making money, they are not getting revenue, so others are doing, for example, labels, artists. I don't know if anyone here in this audience ever wondered and asked himself or herself how much money get each artist for each reproduction or play of the song. So I got the number, and it's 0.000014123 per play. It means that if you want to make $100, you have to get 300,000 streams. So it means that probably, or we can get to the conclusion that probably the music and the performers, authors, are not either getting much money from here. So, and this is the third element of the title of this session, that the inflection point. It seems like 2018, last year, for Spotify, was the inflection point. Last year, for the first time in 12 years, they got to black numbers. They could make money, and they could, for the first time in company history, it's their operating income, net income, free cash flow were all positive, which is extraordinary for the company. At the same time, we are seeing that Netflix, which is another unicorn, another good sample of the digital economy, now it's showing signs of tartness because they have very quite bad result in the last quarter of the year. So we are with these numbers, we see another example of revenue share and intellectual property rights. Recently, the European Union passed a revision of the European directive, and among other changes, one of them are where they were called the value gap, which is called or it's understood that the difference between the money that big technology platforms are getting from user-generated content are getting from exploiting intellectual property rights, and the actual money that performers, labels get from these platforms. So, and the European directive was trying to balance the different rights between, the different interests between different copyright holders. So we see that the intellectual property rights and revenue share is not always pacific. It's actually very complex to try to find the balance. And what they are now doing, or what we are doing now in Europe with the new directive, is obliging the platforms to get licenses and pay more money. But at the same time, we saw very recently with YouTube that they are decreasing the royalties that they are paying to YouTubers and casters because they are not getting enough money to share it with the creators. So in general terms, we see that apparently highly successful unicorns, which are based on the exploitation of intellectual property rights, are struggling very much to obtain profits, and other companies are not are also example of this. I just took a few of them. Performer and labels companies are not very enthusiastic about the revenues they receive from internet services, and obviously they got way much money in the analog era before the internet came along. But at the same time, as I said before, now we have in an inflection point because after more than a decade, few of these companies are finally going in red number, in black numbers, which is a good. I'm finishing. Which is a good sign of maybe that they are finding a good business model that could get this economy healthier. So now that we have the content, which is basically intellectual property rights, and that some revenues are being generated, we need to find how all parties involved in this economy, including internet companies, creators, labels, gain enough profits to enrich the economy. Thank you very much.
Good, Andy. Thank you very much. How many people here are considered to be tech entrepreneurs? How many people are related to that? Can I see hands? People that really think about IPR and how do I transfer my value in my company with this tool. Okay. Not too many still, but nevertheless. Thank you, Andy. Let's go and continue straight away with Clara for our last angle, open innovation and IPR. I'll give you the floor right away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I think I agree with my co-panelists that the value of IP and the value of intangibles is increasing. 10 years ago, about 40% of the value of a company was related to intangibles. Now, many companies, 90% of the value that they have is based on the IP that they own, the IP that they transfer, and the use and the transfer of this IP. So I think there is definitely a trend towards that. In the US, Germany, Switzerland, these countries, even in Asia, the investors, the first thing they do, even before talking to you about your technology and your team, is knowing how many patents do you have and whether those patents have been contested, etc. So that is, it's just an area that if you're a technology entrepreneur, it's just an area you cannot forget about. Now, with open innovation, there are new things to take into account. Corporations are now having venture capitalists and innovation groups that are looking, I mean, their job is to look proactively at startups and also do agreements with universities to work in certain challenges and technologies that they're not able to have inside. Famously, the head of Roche said in an internal meeting, they said, I'm hiring now the best scientists so that they can find the next technology in the future outside of Roche. So more and more this is happening outside. But in order to do that and not die in the process, you need to have startups and universities. You need to have an ecosystem that understands the value of IP and also the value of having a framework analyzing all these relationships. So for us, for IP lawyers, the framework means understanding what the value of the IP is if you're having a collaboration, a co-creation. For instance, I know that Repsol and Sacyr are having teams that internally, and they're launching challenges to improve or to have technologies from the outside come up with a solution for a certain problem. They bring startups from the outside or universities, and they do teams where they co-create a solution to a certain problem. And it's very important to have on the first hand the background IP, so understand what each team is bringing to the table. In fact, in my experience, these conversations have been very useful in order to know what are you trying to achieve and actually brings the team together. Secondly, well, you have to put a value to that IP that is bringing into the table, that is coming into from previous teams and what each team is bringing. There are actually European partnerships that we are cooperating with where also that's the first part. So let's define what is the value of your IP. And then the second part is even before nothing has been created, you have to come up with the foreground IP. So what do we expect to come out of this? And if this happens, who is going to own this IP? It's much easier if the same person that creates then owns the IP. That's actually a very seamless process. But where there are several groups, and in fact, that's what now the trend is to have different people from different technologies with different backgrounds. In fact, we were in an agro-chemical, agro-food partnership where there were people coming from artificial intelligence, other people were agro-scientists, different people had to do with water scientists, etc. And they all came together, and each one was bringing very valuable points to the table. But you had to analyze, and you had to put a framework as to what's happening if then we come up with a fantastic invention that actually gets transferred into a product that is going to make this world a better place. Who is going to own the IP, and in fact, more importantly, who is going to be getting the royalties or even the transfer from this sale? So I think that's very important to identify your IP, to put a framework into what may come up of this co-creation, and to negotiate this. And now, in terms of universities, what we find very often is there is an unmatched need or expectation between the university professor who thinks this is really their child and this is their child, and this work of scientific work where they've been working for many, many years has a value, but actually the value is no value, the same with the startups, particularly if you're in B2B, until this product has come into the market. And the actor that is closer to the market is usually the corporates or sometimes the third parties, the startups or the SMEs who are closer to the market. So you actually need this integration into all of them, and you need to have universities, scientific institutions. For instance, in Spain we have Tecnalia, which is a mix of technology centers in the Basque Country, where they have a program around spin-offs of the technology centers, and they try to encourage also this transfer of the knowledge that has been put into these technology centers into the market. So at the end, everybody has to work together and have real expectations. So you cannot have 80% of the results of something that you don't even know. So 80% of zero is zero. If you come up with something that might be 15, 20%, I'm not arguing against universities, I love universities, but sometimes it's hard to come up with something that is agreeable for all parties. And every part in the ecosystem has its value, and at the end, you need to just have a dialogue and negotiate and come up with a solution, if possible, before the start of the program of the project, because afterwards it's more complicated.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
You will get your chance to applaud for our speakers. It's really, I think, very difficult, but very well done to show the three angles that IP is so important to manage. I mean, it's like if you screw up with your IP, and if it's not clear what you're doing with your IP rights, you run into trouble. And it's something that we have to focus on also from a policy point of view, from the European programs. I mean, in the European technology programs, it is very important in the standard contract that the IP is well managed. And I think now you have the reasons behind. I would like to give you the opportunity to ask a few questions or to strongly disagree with whatever we have said. Is there anyone that would like to ask a question? Anyone? No? Well, then it was very, very clear. I think it's very important listening to all of you to see indeed how important IP is to prove your value and to make sure that with the background and the foreground that everyone understands where he stands as soon as revenue comes, because that is one of the issues that we see a lot. I think my question to the panel would be, and I wonder who is going to answer it, but when is the time to start talking about IP? When you are an entrepreneur or when you are an investor? What is your experience as for entrepreneurs or representing entrepreneurs? When is it important to start about IP? Is it something you wait for the question, or is it something that you put on the table yourself? Maybe Jean-Yves, can I ask you first?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think that from the beginning, entrepreneurs, founders of startups have to take all the steps in order to secure their IP portfolio and precisely to avoid any concern, any problems in connection with their intellectual property assets, to enter or to put in place the correct NDAs just to protect the trade secrets, to file the proper trademark patent applications, to, at the end of the day, make, as I mentioned, to take all the steps necessary to secure and to ensure that you are having a great and a huge protection in terms of intellectual property.
Yeah. Okay, maybe
Yes, maybe just to add on that, I fully agree. I think it's very important that, because there's always the issue of costs, so I think I would agree, you need to have a proper IP strategy and you need to have talked to an IP expert quite early in the process, just to know what you can and can't say, even to investors or in presentations. We all like to talk about our achievements, but sometimes that's actually killing a potential patent. So you have to just know and have a bit of a strategy. But then I also recommend that you in some cases, you may wait until you've had your first Series A or your first investment, because IP is an investment. It's not a cost, it's an investment. And so sometimes you just need to keep that in mind when you are raising funds that for you, IP is very relevant for the success of your company, and that you're going to need to raise some funds for that too.
Andy, the last word is yours.
Yeah, the last word in 10 seconds. And I totally agree. And I like to add also that to think about entrepreneurs should think also about IPR when they are selling goods, not only services, but also goods. And I'm seeing from here a beverage that it's outside, Convida, Kombucha, they were friends, and because they are very good friends of mine, and because they are very good friends, they they knew all the IP intellectual property from food, from meals, and from having time together. And they got investors 2 years ago, and before that, because we are very good friends, we devised the strategy to protect as a trade secret all the process of manufacturing the beverage itself. It's a kombucha beverage. So I was seeing from here, it's a very good example how IPR are not only on digital services, but also on products that they can receive investors. And during the round, we also selected what kind of information they had access to and what not. So this is also very important when receiving investors.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was one thing that was missing is IPR is not just the value that you represent, but it's also very important to be able to answer to investors that you have the access to the necessary background IPR, because otherwise you're empty-handed. So thank you very much, very good. Clara, Jean-Yves, and Andy for your very interesting and clear explanations of IPR, which is not simple. Can I ask you for a big round of applause for this panel? Thank you very much. See you next time. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This rounds up our talks about legal tech. And next up, we're going to be talking about insurance and the technology which is going to change the future of insurance. InsurTech is certainly an area of maximum interest for me as well. I run a company which works in insurance. It's called Liberalia. We basically are a third-party administrator for mobile phone insurance. So I'll be listening on in great detail to see what is going to be the future of insurance, where it's going. And to start off with, we have Enrique Gavilanes from Mutua Madrileña, who is going to be talking to us about driving the future of insurance. So a warm welcome to Enrique. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. So I see a lot of people leaving. It's a pity because we are going to talk about insurance, and it's super interesting. You will see. Well, so insurance. Insurance for us is our main business, obviously. In Mutua Madrileña, we have auto insurance as the core activity we do, although we are diversifying. What we are going to talk about today is how InsurTech is pushing us to move into a different way of conceiving what is our activity and how the clients are behaving and are relating to us. No? So let me start with some numbers. Here you have the investments that we are seeing in fintech, and there you have the small investments we are seeing in insurance tech. The guys who prepared these charts, actually they tweak a little bit the size of the bars. You can imagine that the investment we are having in insurance is booming, is boosting, is going higher and higher. However, it's obviously not at the same size as the guys from our banking industry competitors. Why? Because insurance is starting right now to feel the pressure of InsurTech. It's a really old industry, but today we are starting to see a lot of new trends that are helping us to think that this might change, and therefore you guys from the startups are coming here to bring us a lot of pressure and a lot of new ideas that are changing the way we are seeing the industry. Okay? What is changing right now? Well, the things that are changing are a lot of new technologies that are becoming more and more popular. Okay? So the most interesting thing today is obviously data. If I ask my fellows from the actuary department, they might tell me that they are sitting over 100 years of data. They know everything about half of the people in Madrid. Okay? But obviously, with the capabilities we have today on data analytics, this is changing, and we can think about the customer in a different way. I mean, it's not trying to insure big numbers. It's about insuring individual persons. And this is changing a lot of the main foundations of the industry, because if you think about insurance, it was before an industry where we socialize the risk and we share the risks among a lot of people. Today, with the data, we can identify who is the good client to insure and who has different risks and needs to be insured in a different way. So this is making us a lot of more sophisticated. And definitely, with the apparition of these new trends that are changing our way to relate with clients, this is evolving. And today we can think about the startups pushing in our sector as the guys that are making us jealous because they are doing things that we cannot do. For example, the guys from Lemonade and Oscar, they are changing the full stack of insurance, but there are a lot of other small startups with IT enablers that are helping us to change. For example, the way we do things in the car, in mobility, or the way we do things at home. Today, the insurance is becoming more a service. It's not longer anymore a risk industry of big numbers. It's talking about the risk of each one of us and how that person relates with the services he has around. This is the main change, actually. I would like to share with you two small things that are helping us also to change. Actually, the startups for us, are pushing us into two directions. They are doing things that we cannot do. They are doing things quicker and faster, but they are doing also things in a different way. So they are helping us also to reflect the way we are organized and trying to change the way we as a big corporate behave with our people, and we empower our employees so they can become small startups in our company. And that's something we are doing, for example, in Mutua. We are doing things like mobility right now. We are changing our relationship with the client with different channels that are enabled with IT, with artificial intelligence to relate with the customers. We are changing the way we do things, but we are also changing the things we are giving to the client. We are doing also right now car rental. We might do at some point car sharing, and we are seeing all these kind of new assets with the client in a different way. What we try to do is to become a small startup or a small compound of startups. And for example, in mobility, this is a real game changer. What we are trying to do is to be closer to the OEMs, but also to provide new kind of services to our clients. Startups are helping us, and we are creating the environment to share that with our clients, for example, as added value services. Also, before finishing, I would like to say that it's true that the numbers are not great today in insurance tech. That's maybe because this is not the fanciest industry ever. Insurance is a very old-fashioned industry. However, this is starting to rise. And we are seeing a lot of energy and a lot of innovation. And this is helping us also to think about what we want to do and what we want to be. And all that energy is changing the industry. So I hope this was a good start for the next part of the season and the next events that are coming. From Mutua, we really think that this event is very innovative, also in the way it is done, because we can see a lot of people, a lot of energy, and this is helping us a lot to get new ideas. And this is also for big companies like us a game changer, to be close to the reality of startups. So thank you very much, and hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much. That was concise and down to the point. So our next discussion is about InsurTech, and basically, is it a hype? Is it something which we're sort of talking about and really wanting it? Or, I mean, my company works in insurance, and I don't think we're an InsurTech company. Should I be pushing myself? Should I be pushing my company to reinvent ourselves to be InsurTech, or is that for another type of company? So our next panel includes our moderator, Paul Morgenthaler from Commerzbank, and with him are Rob Moffat from Balderton, Sami Rubin from Yule Life, and Oke Ulizu, bought by many. So I'd like a warm welcome to our expert panel here today, and welcome to South Summit.
Rob, yeah, okay. Fantastic.
Thank you. Yep. So hi everybody and welcome to our panel. Over the next 30 minutes we're going to discuss all things InsurTech, and we're going to explore where the real opportunities in that space are. I'm Paul Morgenthaler. I'm a partner with Commerz Ventures. We are the venture capital fund of Commerzbank, investing in fintech and InsurTech companies across Europe, the United States, and Israel. And I'm very happy to present you a trio from the UK today. They flew in all the way from London. They are InsurTech veterans, and we're really happy to have them here today. And we'll ask them quickly to introduce themselves. Okay, if you start.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name's Oke Ulizu. I'm Chief Operating Officer at Bought by Many. We're an InsurTech. I've been going 6 or 7 years, but for the last 3 years, we've been selling our own products, so as an MGA, in the pet insurance market.
Hey, I'm Sami Rubin. I'm the founder and CEO of ULife. We're a new life insurance company that inspires life. We don't talk about death too much, but we inspire people to live longer, happier, healthier lives. We started 3 years ago. We launched about 9 months ago. We're selling insurance to companies, life insurance to companies. They cover their employees, and then they get a reward, an app where they can get healthy rewards, incentives and rewards for doing healthy activities.
And I'm Rob. I'm one of the partners at Balderton Capital, so I'm the other investor in the room. Some research recently showed that we're the most active Series A tech investor in Europe at the moment. We invest across Europe, but we invest at Series A. We invest across sectors. I personally do a lot of fintech and insurance. So in insurance, I was the first Series A investor in Zego. We provide insurance initially for the gig economy, and now insurance for all forms of new mobility. They launched in Spain fairly recently, originally from the UK. Made another investment in a company called Dingy, and in fintech companies like Wavestream and Clio. And then in our portfolio more broadly, we're investors in Revolut, GoCardless, Comply Advantage, and similar businesses.
Great, let's get started. So insurance hasn't really experienced that much disruption as many other sectors. Okay, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think insurance is a tough gig. Theoretically, it should be right for insurance is 300 years old, at least 300 years old. And having worked in a big insurer, one of the biggest, two of the biggest, Prudential and Legal & General in the UK, it's one of those that hasn't actually moved on that much. But the reality is the barriers to entry for a new entrant are significant in the insurance industry. The first one of those is really access to insurance capital. So you can't just start an insurance company. And that's difficult. You have to go and find someone who's going to work with you to do creative things, launch innovative products, and take a bit of risk in doing that. And that's not easy. So I think that there's a barrier in terms of that. I think also there's barriers in terms of distribution. Distribution in insurance kind of goes in waves. It's a very difficult thing to break into. So if you're going to sell insurance direct, you find yourself a capital provider, but then you've got to be able to economically sell products, and that's really, really difficult unless you find a vehicle to do that. The one most recently are comparison websites, but that becomes a price game. So distribution is one of the hardest things to crack, not just for us insurtechs, all insurtechs that start. And I think probably the last thing I'd mention is around giving it a go. So, for example, I've just listened to N26 in the room over there, and you talk about Monzo. It's pretty easy to get a credit card and become a customer. It's pretty easy to open an account. You know, it doesn't cost you anything, so you can grow really quickly into vast numbers. But with insurance, even life general insurance called general insurance, that's a 1-year contract. Having a punt or something you love for a 1-year contract or subscription, as some people call it, is much tougher decision to make. So growing quickly can be much more difficult. So I think all of these things add up to why, although disruption insurance sounds eminently sensible, it's a really difficult thing to do.
So now we have heard about all the barriers to enter that space. Sammy, why have you then entered that space? Is it actually attractive for a tech-driven startup to do insurance?
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a masochist maybe, but I like pain. However, bearing in mind all the obstacles, I think the life insurance or insurance just generally, as you were saying, is a huge industry. I mean, just in terms of the sheer size in the global industry, it's huge. And obviously, a lot of the disruption has happened in areas which people desire, which people want. Insurance isn't something that you wake up in the morning and you think, oh, I really want to buy insurance today. It's something you need, but it's not something that you want. And one of our challenges is to somehow create a proposition that is engaging, that people want. So for me personally, I was really attracted by the sheer size of the opportunity and also the fact that there really is lack of innovation. It's an open canvas, and there's a real opportunity to really shape it. It's not sexy, and I actually like that. I've worked myself in 2 other startups in the life insurance space. I've always been drawn to life insurance and working with actuaries for some reason. I find them engaging, exciting, inspiring. I don't know why, but I do. The complexity of the operational insurance infrastructure, it is complex, it's challenging, it's hugely sort of fulfilling in terms of the number of things and obstacles you have to navigate. So I'm really excited. I'm really happy that we've launched a new life insurance company in this space. Life insurance traditionally has been the last thing that has really been disrupted in the insurance game. And I really am excited that we hope to be one of the new players in that space.
So when 5 years ago, we were starting to invest from our first fund and we were looking for startups in the insurance space, basically there was none. And meanwhile, of course, that has drastically changed. And just over the last weeks, we have seen some astonishing mega funding rounds of insurtechs. So I'm asking the investor on the panel, Rob, what should we make of these mega funding rounds? Is there signal or is this just noise?
I think funding rounds should always only be, at best, a distant signal of what's really going on. And what really matters is, are people building real businesses? Are they building real premiums? Have they got sensible loss ratios? Are they delivering a great customer experience? And that's what we should really care about. And yeah, like you, I started looking at InsurTech probably 4 or 5 years ago. Went to the first InsurTech Connect conference in Las Vegas, met the founders of Lemonade and Trove and Hippo, and thought, okay, this is really exciting, let's go. I'm going to make like 10 investments in this area over the next few years. And I've made one and a small one. And yet, so it is good to see the money there. And I think what's good is that lots of VCs are interested. SoftBank, obviously super interested, put a lot of money into Lemonade. I think they'd love to do more as well. And then the strategics are also very interested. So there is plenty of money there. I think it's probably more is being invested earlier on into companies than you might see in other sectors. And that can be dangerous. So I think that's something we have to watch as investors, that we're not giving companies too much money too early that ends up sort of putting them on the wrong path.
Let's stay a little bit with Europe. You've seen probably hundreds of insurtechs over the last few years, and drawing from that and recognizing the patterns, what do you think are the most attractive vectors of attack for an insurtech startup?
So I think there's a lot to go up against, as OK mentioned, and there's huge data and historic data. There is network effect with brokers, there's network effects in distribution, there is all the claims history that existing insurers have. So I like companies that can go in and either work with existing insurers, so like software, B2B plays, or they find new segments or new categories where there is no history. So one of the reasons we invested in Zego is they started off doing insurance for Deliveroo drivers and Uber drivers, which is a new category. And existing insurers had no historic claims to go with. They had no way to price that risk. What they do is that means they just triple the prices and think it'll work itself out. And that creates an opportunity for a hungry startup. Similarly, you see companies doing drone insurance or doing cyber insurance or taking new categories that existing insurers can't get their heads around. On the B2B side, we see people taking new data approaches. So most actuaries are very smart people working in Excel, doing linear regressions. If you can take a machine learning approach driven by 2019 technology with 2019 quality software engineers, you can really change that. So I think that's what we're seeing more on the B2B side. It's those machine learning driven companies making headway.
And what is the right model for distribution? I mean, if you start out as an insurtech, you can go B2C, you can go B2B, or then there are companies that are going B2B2C. Sammy, what's your view on that, and how have you gone about that decision?
I think there are different modes of distribution for different types of insurance. So different categories lend itself to different types of distribution. In terms of our own experience, we actually set out on a B2C journey. And we were very excited about just going at the public. And it's actually through raising money, and I think it was maybe conversations like with you, Rob, and with other investors. And we were very fortunate. We were funded by Local Globe in our seed round. And Local Globe were really, really good at sitting us down and pointing out some of the real challenges of B2C. I mean, I know that you're doing a terrific job in the B2C job, but in terms of building a new life insurance brand that really engages people and gets people to want to buy life insurance, that's a really big ask. So we pivoted, or we expanded our model to a B2B model. And since then, things have really opened up for us. We're very excited about B2B because businesses in general in the UK and in many countries around the world, they do buy life insurance for all their staff. And it's just seen as a tick box. So it comes by yearly, annual renewals. They just buy their life insurance, and often it may take a few days or a couple of weeks to get a quote. And they're just used to a very old, automated, old way of actually buying their life insurance. But it is an existing market that's already in play, and it hasn't been disrupted. So for us, that was an opportunity for us that was really exciting. So we go into companies, and we're not just selling life insurance, we're selling wellness. And going back to what I said earlier, in terms of insurance, something that you need, wellness is something that people really want. So we've created a currency of well-being, for example, because Ucoin, for every mile you walk, you earn a Ucoin, and you can exchange that for air miles. So you can walk a mile, earn an air mile, or meditate and earn Amazon vouchers. You can offer that to your staff, and that's a real compelling proposition for a company. So beyond the life insurance, we're actually expanding it into a wellness story or a wellness product. And that's something that's sort of that's really accelerated our growth. So I think there are different distribution models. We've gone for the B2B. There's also the B2B2C in that consumers or employees themselves can top up or upgrade their life insurance directly through us as well. So one has to be careful. But I think the B2B is really where the real opportunities are. But if one can crack it in B2C, then like Lemonade, bought by many, I mean, I think that's really the huge potential.
Yeah, I mean, okay, your company, bought by many, is seen as one of the few successful examples of a B2C insurtech. In brackets, we're an investor, so I have to disclose that. But it's true. I mean, B2C for you guys has worked really well. Was there once a point when you thought, well, maybe we should switch to B2B, or was it always very clear for you that B2C is the path for you? And how did you go about that?
Yeah, no, good question. I think whenever people talk to me about insurtech, and we often talk about these different distribution models, I can see why many start down the B2C and go into B2B. There are difficulties in B2B as well. You know, the length of the sales process is also quite challenging. But I mean, I joined almost 4 years ago, and the reason I joined was because I could see what the guys had done in terms of understanding how to reach out to customers using digital channels. You know, we are a business born in the digital age, so Google and Facebook and Instagram are things that are just natural to us and our team and our marketing and distribution team. And actually, when I realized that, I thought, well, if these guys can really crack how we can reach out to a group of people and get them engaged, what we have to then do is build I know, make it sound that easy, is to build products that get product market fit, that customers will believe in, and then also build an operation that will deliver excellence in customer experience. So, because the reality is, insurance is a trust game. People generally don't trust insurers. So if you can build a business that they do trust and they will recommend, then actually you get this whole, if not viral effect, but this whole member get member situation going on. And that's effectively what's happened. We've been able to start by using a reasonable amount of money to reach people in volume. We've created products that meet their needs and show them that we care, right? Importantly, show them that we care and they can trust us. So even though pet insurance is a bigger market, we produce products that really met the pain points of customers. And even if customers didn't buy those products, they thought, well, these guys have thought about it. They care about the things that are difficult for customers in this area, which meant they gave us a chance. You know, so we became a brand builder in what is a notoriously difficult thing to do. And then in terms of delivering service, Paul, you know all about it, but we have a Net Promoter Score that vacillates between 75 and 80. 75 and 80 across all touch points for an insurer, which is frankly ridiculous. And it's done because we've worked really hard at like all insurtechs do actually, but understanding customers, what they need, how we can deliver a service that meets their need and can be 10 times better than the incumbents. And I kind of talk about it. It's a bit like if you're a surfer. You try and get through the first waves that are difficult, but if you can make it, just the same way you're saying, if you can make it over those waves in a B2C market, then suddenly it's calm. And the next big waves will be the competitors coming at you. But you've just got that opportunity to build a brand that people trust and recommend. As I say, 20% of our customers come from recommendation from other customers. And that's been the same whether we were growing at 10% or growing at nearly 200%, which is what we're doing at the moment.
And the great advantage you have is people claim quite a lot on pet insurance, and you have a fantastic claims experience. So I'm not an investor, so I can say nice things.
He definitely is.
Yeah, so you can delight them with the claims experience, and then they can start telling their friends. I think other insurance categories like life, it's harder because people don't claim very often. So it's
Rob, you've hit the nail right on the head. We invested. When we sat down and looked at the claims, we sort of said claims will be the thing we win on, right?
Yeah.
And so right from day one, we said we will have no claim forms, right? This is a modern business. Why are there forms in this? And so people could take a picture, upload it, and there they start. And actually, if you read our FIFA reviews, people always talk about that. And you're absolutely right. 1 in 3 people, customers claim, you know, which is much higher than motor, much higher than home. But they experience this incredible claims process, which frankly, sometimes they don't believe how quick and easy it is, and they tell other people about it. And I think the other thing I'll add, sorry to go on, is that pet insurance is an emotional thing. We insure something that people think as next to their children, a really key part of their family. So when you get that right and people are in an emotional state, they like you. You know, our vision is to build an insurer that people love, and we're a long way along in doing that.
So over the recent months, there has been a lot of discussion around neobanks versus neo-insurers and which model is the more attractive bet for investors. So with Rob, we have an investor in a neobank, so I think you have a privileged vantage point on that question. Where do you weigh in that discussion?
I think, yeah, comparing neobanks to neo-insurers is tough. I think, so what I like about Revolut and also about Clio, which you might not know, but is a sort of even thinner sort of layer around controlling your finances. I like both of those is that people really engage very strongly with them. This is where your money lives. This is where financial services lives for you. You're using your Revolut card a lot. You're doing foreign exchange through Revolut. That gives you that day-to-day contact with a customer. And that allows you to cross-sell a whole bunch of different products, whether it's trading of stocks, it's investments, it's loans, it's foreign exchange, it's crypto, or it's insurance. And Revolut actually sell 2 different insurance products quite successfully already. And I'm sure they'll sell more insurance over time. So I think that's the advantage they have. They have that regularity of touch point that I think it's no insurance business can ever generate. What we saw in Germany a few years ago was a bunch of companies like WeFox, Knip, Clark, GetSafe, all trying to be this kind of insurance wallet, a bit like a sort of Revolut of insurance. And they've all sort of iterated and developed on that model, and a couple of them have got their own insurance license and started selling their own insurance. Because I think it's really tough to be the insurance wallet. What you can do is insurance is absolutely a trillion-dollar industry with great margins if you do it right. And so there's a very profitable model to be had there if you can really make it click.
Can I take issue with that?
Yeah.
I agree with everything you said, and one of the things and challenges that we've worked on is this touch point and this idea of engagement. That's because on average, a life insurance company may have 1 touch point a year with their customers, maybe 2 if they're lucky.
Yeah, that's where your wellness comes in.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, just in terms of the model that we've done and other insurance companies are doing, we've built sort of a gamified model where people are downloading the app and using it up and engaging with YouLife. Our average touch point is about 120 times a year now. So our DAU over MAU, our daily active users, is like 40%. So 40% of our monthly users are engaging every single day with YouLife. They're checking their Ucoin, they're checking their wellness, they're checking their steps, they're checking their mindfulness. And obviously they can upgrade their life insurance within the app as well. So you're right, it sets a challenge for insurance companies. How can we engage more? You look at a company like Discovery or Vitality. I was the founding CEO of Vitality Life in the UK, but you look at now how much that insurance company in South Africa, how many, so they're doing car insurance, they're doing life insurance, they're doing health insurance, they've just started a bank now. They're doing savings, they're doing investments. So I do believe if you get the engagement right, and we're doing that around wellness and gamification, I think the opportunity to expand into other products, I think, is enormous.
If you bring together the engagement of a neobank with the monetization of a neo-insurer, then obviously you have the big winner.
Yeah, that's a good challenge for us.
What about, I agree, and I think there's a whole thing around ecosystems, and I think that's what you're talking about. All insurers have to think ecosystem now, not just insurance. How can I engage in other ways with the whole ecosystem? Same for us with pets. So we've looked at, dog walkers and device wearers, and what can we do? Can we work with banks, neobanks, and otherwise? The whole thing, I think I was in a session around collaboration. I think if you're going to be a smart startup, what you've got to think about is not just what you use in your core, but how you can grow the core by attaching to the ecosystem. And that's a real advantage for insurtechs because they normally have new systems which can link in with partners much quicker than the incumbents can, who are stymied by legacy systems that make it very difficult for them just to take an idea, run with it, get up and running in weeks and months. And so I think that's another area where insurtechs have a real advantage.
So the success of an insurtech obviously depends on the right strategy, the right entry point in the market, but also on the thousands of operational decisions that you have to make and the execution. And I would like to ask the two founders, what do you think are the key success factors for an insurtech from an operational point of view?
I mean, so we're looking at various factors. I mean, we're obviously, from our perspective, we're looking at the number of companies that we engage with. So we're looking at the number of companies, the size of those companies. I mean, we've now over 100 businesses are now coming to us because at the moment in the UK, you've got 50,000 businesses that have life insurance out of 1 million companies that actually don't have life insurance. So even of those 50,000, and some of those are very sizable, there's a big market there, and obviously at the moment about 60% of our companies have never had life insurance before. So we're getting those companies that are switching life insurance to us, and those who are buying life insurance for the first time. That's, for us, we're always looking at the type of the ideal customer profile, the customer who's buying our life insurance. We're looking at the engagement, because we know that if we can get employees to engage in our app, that creates a very sticky experience. If a company, so we're dealing with a company, for example, now Mintel, 500 staff, has just taken ULife for all their staff. They've now got leaderboards, they're comparing how much Ucoin they've earned, they're competing with one another on their steps, they're looking at how much Amazon vouchers they can buy with their Ucoin. There's a competitive spirit, and we go in with smoothie bikes, we do wellness days. It's very hard, if a company's really engaged, for them to switch to a traditional life insurance at the end of the year. That's something which we feel we're very optimistic about in terms of that stickiness. So we're always looking at, obviously, our own margins, and we're looking at the number of companies that we're working with and the type of company, and then we're looking, crucially for us, is our engagement stats and how much are the employees engaging in our app.
From our perspective, I've kind of mentioned it, we're a business that built with the customer at its core. Literally obsessive, customer-centric culture. That's what we're about. And so, right from day one, when we had 0 customers to now where we're approaching 100,000, we've always monitored our net promoter score. It's kind of like your engagement thing. This is the thing across touchpoints that tells us we're doing a great job for customers. We look at being I suppose two really key pillars. Ease and ease to deal with, and showing that we care. And we know we're pretty sure that if we can keep those metrics high, the rest of the business will fit in behind us. So the technology, so we are a tech business, right? But the tech is there to support being great for customers, not for the sake of it. Whether that's our own tech or third-party tech that we bring in because it helps us. For example, we just do some work with an AI-based feedback business called Chattermill, and that's been incredible for us to analyze all our Zendesk tickets and tells us a completely different picture to our traditional feedback mechanisms of what we're doing well and what we're not doing well for customers, which means that we're able to really, really clearly go and fix stuff within the tech or within the service proposition or within the type of people we're recruiting or within the way that live chat works, all of these things to make things better for customers. And we just measure it. And so, I think often when I talk to people about their investors, and they say, surely there's more to it than that. And I say, there isn't, right? The customer is at the center of what we do. Everything we do as a business is focused on making them happy. And them being happy means that it was easy for them and they thought that we cared about what they did. And that simple model seems to work.
Great. We have 20 seconds left for this panel. And thank you very much to our panelists. And you managed to do one thing that's becoming increasingly rare these days. Very few of you guys were staring at your phone during the panel. So to me, that is like the KPI to measure the quality. I think you guys have done well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. This is very interesting. I introduced myself at the beginning. I think most people have changed now, so I'll just do a quick recap. Apart from being a professional athlete, I raced the Speed Ski World Cup. My top speed is 231 kilometers per hour on a pair of skis. But I'm also CEO of Liberalia, a mobile phone insurance third-party administrator. I also run a family office which invests in startups, specialized in hardware. But after listening to all this and also looking at what's going to happen in the next panel, I'm really thinking that I should consider InsurTech a bit more, especially since it's one of my main areas of interest. So enough of me and more about our guests. We have our moderator, Javier Torremocha from Kibo Ventures. He's going to lead the panel, which is about the tale of rapid change, innovation in insurance. Is it as fast as it should be? And on the panel, we have Fermín Bueno from Finovista, and Julio Pernia from Bedeo, and last but not least, Carmen del Campo, Mutua Madrileña. And I think we have to congratulate one of our members. I'm sure our moderator will explain, but he's just won the FinTech startup competition. So he is one of the 10 finalists for tomorrow. I'm sure he'll tell you a little bit more about it. Warm welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Renato was saying, we're having one of the finalists for tomorrow, which is is a huge success, becoming one of the 10 finalists out of 100 candidates. So big congrats. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
So we're going to talk. I guess this is the second panel in a row talking about InsurTech. We'll try to make this lively and amusing, so don't hesitate to interrupt each other to build on each one of your comments. I'm going to briefly introduce them, and I will ask you to also briefly talk about what you've done in the past, what you're doing right now. Carmen is head of innovation at Mutua Madrileña. Julio is a serial entrepreneur, and I don't know how many companies you've launched already, but several in your career. And Felipe is an investor, also specializing in purely on fintech and insurtech startups. So if you want to, very briefly to the audience, present yourselves, and we'll get started.
Well, when I joined Mutua Madrileña 1 year ago, and I said, I'm joining the innovation department, everybody says, what do you do there? So what are you doing to innovate in the insurance sector, and especially in Mutua Madrileña? That for some of you, if not are from Madrid, Mutua Madrileña is a company with 2 million clients, basically in Madrid and the biggest cities in Spain. And what we try to do in Mutua is trying to be at the same level as other companies that they appear in, like Bought by Many, that has just spoken previous to us, and having the same level of relationship with the clients. Now, everything is changing, and clients know that they don't need a car, they just need to go from one place to another, and it's happening exactly the same with the insurance. Most of us, we don't need to have a car insured during 1 year. Probably we just need to have an insurance or need to be quiet when we are driving with our families just during this moment. And companies is a huge challenge for us because we need to be prepared for what the customer is asking or expecting from us. I think that what we try to do from innovation is trying to understand this expectation and trying to define this product that is going to be competitive in the next 5 years when probably everything changes.
Julio?
Yeah, so Video is a visual intelligence platform. It's a startup created 2 years ago by my co-founder Manuel and I. We were with an app already in the house of the insurer, right? So we decide, okay, what about if we connect now in real time with a geolocated video call with an agent or an expert in order to speed up processes? And that's how Video started. And then we decided to add smart technologies around the visual channel, right? Like artificial intelligence or augmented reality to provide contextual information on the claim.
Right now we are 22 people working in Spain and in Mexico, and working with around 19 insurance companies around the world.
Fermín.
Hello, good afternoon. Fermín Bueno, co-founder and managing partner of Finovista. At Finovista, we help transform financial services and insurance industry in Spain and Latin America, building bridges between the fintech and insurtech world and the corporate world. We do this through a two-pronged mission. We try to empower and facilitate the fintech and insurtech ecosystems. We've got one of the largest event platforms in Spain and Latin America with FinoSummit. And then we also accelerate, scale, and build new business opportunities through startup corporate collaboration in these two industries. In that side, we are investors through our Startup Bootcamp programs. We are part of the Startup Bootcamp group. We have currently done 40 investments in Latin America, which turn us into the largest investor in fintech and insurtech and in Latin America. And we also work a lot with financial services institutions, with insurers, helping them to innovate with startup engagement programs, competitions, challenges, and various other programs.
Thank you. I'm Javier Torremocha. I'm a founding partner of Kiva Ventures. We're an early stage fund based here in Madrid, investing in Spanish and Portuguese entrepreneurs globally. I'm going to start creating some controversy. A lot of investors ask us, do you guys invest in fintech? Do you guys invest in insurtech? We do have one fintech investment in a company called Flywire. It's based between Boston and Valencia and basically facilitates cross-border payments in different verticals. Education being the main one, but they also do medical and travel. Yeah, we do invest. It's, how many investments do you have? It's like, well, just one. And the reason we give many times is that fintech or insurtech normally has two words in it, and a lot of the times we're missing either the fin aspect or the tech aspect, no? And insurtech. So, given you're the largest investor in the region, given you've founded an insurtech startup, given you work with insurtech startups, do you also think there is a lot of companies that call themselves or name themselves insurtech, fintech, or label themselves as such, but at the end of the day, there's very little real mass behind the companies?
Well, certainly there has been a lot of hype around fintech, especially the fintech world, right, in the last few years, right? It does happen that some startups might have not so much technology and some, financial services. But we do see lots of fintech startups, both in Spain and in the region, right? And there's been a tremendous growth in the last few years, right? Over 40 to 50% yearly growth in number of startups in countries like Mexico, like Brazil, like Spain, right? So there is a tremendous movement, right? And it is really happening, right? It is really happening. And investors are really active in the region, not just local investors, international investors like Finovista, or even US investors pouring a lot of capital into the markets.
Why is that? Is there a specific... Why is there such an opportunity in the region for that? Is it the way it's... Yeah.
Well, because banking is very inefficient and insurance very inefficient in various ways, right? Both in the served market, but also in the underserved market, right? Countries like Mexico have 50% of the population which is currently unbanked. It does happen the same in Colombia, in Peru. That is a huge opportunity, right? Technology, our mobile phones are in everyone's hands, right? Over 70% penetration, right? The means are there to deploy the technology and to deploy and to provide the services, right? So the opportunity is there. And countries like Mexico or Colombia has a tremendous entrepreneurial tech drive, which is really leveraging the opportunity, right?
Yeah. also think that in the region there are so many opportunities, at least in the insurance sector, because from our perspective, our experience is that in the pain point over there is bigger than in other regions, right? So the theory is that in order to create a successful product, you have to look for a pain point that has not been solved yet, try to optimize them with technology, and solving also or improving the customer satisfaction experience. And that's what happened exactly in the insurance industry in Mexico. When you have an accident, for instance, in Mexico, what you have to do is they send you an adjuster that is like an expert that has to go to the place of the accident, right? So it's something that is it's a matter of fact. It's where it happens. That means that the driver has to be waiting, I don't know, 45 minutes, 1 hour, till the adjuster go to the place of the accident, which is ridiculous, right? And that's how, I think that's one of the best examples of how technology, good technology, can help the industry a lot, saving costs and reducing and improving the experience of the customers. Yeah.
Well, on top of what you're saying, I think there are like two different trends. One is everything that is related with technology. And in this case, I almost agree with you that the technology is completely agnostic to one sector or to the other. And it's the case of blockchain, for example. And please let me, I want to do promotion of the blockchain challenge that we've launched from Mutua Madrileña. If you're interested in taking part, you can go to our stand and we will give you all the information. It's really interesting. And blockchain,
we'll come back to
and in this case, blockchain is something that could be applicable to food and it could be applicable to InsurTech. So in this case, this technology is the same for everything. And as everything grows, the technology will be better. And going to your point and going to this company that are really defined as InsurTech companies or PropTech or whatever is because they are really understanding what the client is expecting. We had the example of, well, in your case, I think your technology is such good that you are moving from vehicles working with us to homes, also working with us, and probably you will find another use example that your technology and your platform could be really applicable. So you could be completely horizontal, even you are now defining some use cases related with InsurTech.
I have to say that, you know, we met each other today, like physically, but it happens that there are relationships between all of us. So Finovest invested in Julio's company. Carmen is working with the company of Julio without having known him personally. Mutua is an investor in our funds. So, but nothing was prepared. Nothing was prepared. It just happened to be this way. Yeah?
We are all connected. But we have companies like bought by many that has just spoken. They are an InsurTech company. They could not be in another sector. So their technology or their approach to the client is an opportunity that they've defined here. And the legal framework has given them the business. So it's something that, from my point of view, it's something really, really specific from InsurTech.
I want to come back to something you mentioned about pain points, and you know, from a corporate perspective, I think an innovation, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess one of the things, you know, when you sit down in your committee, you said, well, what do we want to innovate, and part has to do with the pain points of your customers, of your clients throughout the entire process. No? So, in that sense. You know, and when you, as responsible of innovation, how do you approach that? You know, particularly within Mutua, and you're coming from a different corporate, so even more generic. Is it, you know, trying to solve things internally? Is it working with startups? Is it buying startups? Is it how is it? Or are you looking at different ways to do that?
Well, we try to work in open innovation and internal innovation that is really related with the value chain of the business. So this is something not really disruptive. I think almost all of us in innovation work at the same level. In open innovation, I think we need to open the window, look what's happening outside, probably work with, or not without probably, we need to work with other partners, something with a different view that could help us to identify what the startups are appearing in the market or what's happening with customers. And internal innovation, what we need to do, and is an example or an exercise to be humble, so to really identify in your value chain what is being selected or fostered by the clients. In this case, for example, what are you doing opening the new contract with a client is because what the client is expecting is to have a go with Mutua in the same moment as they need. And this is what we need to define. This is something that we really want to do, or what are they expecting from us? And this is what startups like Bedeo are helping.
Yeah. So,
have I answered?
Related with Mutua, what we're doing with them is we are speeding up the underwriting process. When someone signs the policy with the customers, some months ago, what they used to send an adjuster to check if the car has any pre-existing damage before signing the policy. What they are doing now with our technology is to help them just with a link. You click on the link and you go directly to the mobile web browser where they ask you some pictures. And Bedeo with artificial intelligence, we check if there is any pre-existing damage in order to speed up the process, which is an amazing experience for the customers because they don't have to wait a lot of time. And I think it's what you're doing in Mutua is really interesting for startups because you have a very practical approach. Like you are looking for startups that are interesting for your users to solve problems, and you connect them. And this is something like that other insurers they are not doing. So congrats for that.
Thank you.
For helping.
Now, we'll get back to you, no? And us as investors, no? But I'm a bit. The relationship between startups and corporates are a bit of hate and love because it can either boost your sales or it can kill you. No, because corporates many times are continue to behave with startups the same way that they do with other corporates. They want free pilots. They want you to devote all your resources to their needs. They have all these absurd payment timings and so on, and eventually, from an investor standpoint, is like, sounds great, but at the same time, be careful with what you're doing. What has been, your experience so far? Is it part of your core strategy to work with corporates like Mutua? Are you, developing like 5, 7, 10 relationships at a time? How is your, in your business development process, how does that work?
It's a good question. We're talking about gazelles and elephants, but the thing is that our sales cycle for corporate is pretty long. It's like around 12, 13 months. So think about if you are an early stage startup and you're starting to deal with corporates, it could be something huge for you, but it also can kill you, as you said. And the free pilots is something that is happening right now. It's a matter of fact that if you want to collaborate with a corporate, you are going to find, for sure, a pilot to test your technology, which I understand, right? Because they are going to introduce in the process, a huge or really important process for the business of the company. They are introducing something that it could work or it could not work, right? So I understand that I have to test it. But it's true that when we start the collaboration, we met like a cultural shock because we have different needs, different interests, and sometimes it's very difficult for both companies. Our experience is if you don't have like a more or less positive financial situation, it could be problematic. But finally, this type of collaborations are maybe for life. You start with a company, you give them value. So normally you don't stop the project till 5, 6, 10 years because it's more or less the lifetime value of these projects are really interesting. And once you have the stamp of one of the insurers, you're doing a good job, then it's very easy to scale with other companies. So I recommend it, but taking into account that you have to have a positive financial situation. Yeah.
Fermin, from an investor point of view and focusing on InsurTech, the insurance value chain is becoming highly disaggregated, and there are many different pieces. What do you look, at the time of making an investment decision? What are you, what kind of things are you looking at? What's your investment criteria? And also, given most of these things are very vertical oriented, I mean, the clients are mostly insurance companies or trying to, remove insurance companies from the process. What's your relationship with incumbents as to understand, what their really needs are, to understand if that technology in which you're investing, those products in which you're building really serve that need, or it's timing doesn't match?
Yeah. So we are a very special type of investor, right? Because we run acceleration and scale programs and innovation programs, right? And we run those out of our offices in Mexico City with the support of industry partners. That means players like Mutua, like others, right? Mutua is not a partner on our program there, but we do have players like HSBC or Scotiabank or other large corporates which support our initiative. So we are effectively a machine that facilitates the innovation between corporates and startups. We do also invest money because we do have a small venture capital fund that is funded by a couple of LPs, right? So we specifically look at what is worrying our corporate partners, which are banks, insurance companies, and other players of the banking and insurance value chain, right? We look at everything like startups like Beteo here, which does clearly B2B and is a technology enabler of the value chain, and there are many of those. And of course, we also look at business model innovation, right? Startups that are truly disruptive and that are bringing, a threat to the industry, right? We do have those, for example. We are an investor, for example, in Facturedo, which is a marketplace for invoices, or we're also an investor in Finerio, which is a PFM, like a FinTonic for Mexico. So we do cover, the main points or the main worries of the industry, and of course, also the opportunities we see in the region, right? Yeah.
I want to pick up on something you mentioned about enabling technologies. And we've seen like main things over the last 20 years now, and probably one was the PC as the enabler to develop a lot of things on top of that. Then we had mobile, and mobile was really the enabler to a lot of companies emerging that basically didn't exist before. In our opinion, the next wave of that enabler will be AI, and AI will facilitate a lot of applications on technologies that eventually exist, but that will facilitate those applications to have actual practice-ness on companies. Carmen, you mentioned blockchain. So I wanted to ask you, do you really feel AI and blockchain as one of the main enablers for insurance companies, for startups focusing on insurance?
Yeah, I'm completely sure. It's not because we have all these technologies in our solution, it's because we have seen in the insurance company that we are working with that the customer, they are asking for a new way of interaction with their companies, right? And if you think about the customer journey, how is the process from the moment that you sell a policy, the claim, the repairing of the vehicle, and finally the renewal of the policy. If you think about the whole customer journey, we see really interesting challenge to help with AI and blockchain. In our case, blockchain I think is really important in order to be sure that all the information that we are getting, the multimedia content that we get from the claims or the underwriting is secure. You have like a digital evidence of all the multimedia content. So we use blockchain for that in order to be sure about that okay, there is no fraud here, and that didn't change in the moment of the accident to the end of the process. And AI is basic also in the whole customer journey, because we provide practically in real-time information of the damage of the vehicle. When we check the pre-existence of the damage when signing the policy, if the claim that we are processing has any coincidence with the pre-existing damage. And I think if you think about other segments of the customer journey, AI and blockchain are really, really important in our point of view.
Well, I think both technologies go around automation. And in the case of blockchain, what they provide to the industry or to the business where this is being applied is the visibility. So when someone is using blockchain, it's because they trust on the result. And they are just a proof to demonstrate that what is happening now is real. So it's like to have a signed paper, but it's something that is digital. So you don't need to be there. You don't need to have a stamp. This is what blockchain is providing, is to be trust on something. But in the case of artificial intelligence, this technology provides answers. So it's intelligence, it's artificial, so people should be there anywhere. People is not going to disappear. That is something that everybody speaks about when we speak about artificial intelligence, but it's a way to make every process easier, more transparent, and to have more satisfaction, both for managers or for customers who are involved of these projects. So an artificial intelligence is a really, really good example of a technology that could be applied everywhere, even here with people that is going around this event. Probably we are being analyzed and all our data is feeding a very big database that is going to provide something good to the innovation ecosystem in Madrid. So it could be applied to everything. And I think obviously it's something that is going to drive the future in every industry.
There's going to be there are four technologies that in the hands of the startups are very dangerous for the insurance industry, right? You mentioned AI, you mentioned blockchain, but there is also big data, right? Big data, really, insurance is an industry hungry for data, right? And startups, can really leverage that without having all the legacy behind of big insurers, right? So there is lots of, opportunities there. And then IoT, right? Data capturing, sensors all around, right? That is going to change car insurance. That is going to change health insurance. That is going to change.
All of us are walking sensors.
Yeah.
Everybody, with the phones, we're actually a sensor that recovers or retrieves a lot of data that can effectively be used by a lot of people.
Of course. Yeah. Better priced insurance. I mean, a lot of things, right? A lot of things. Enablement in the value chain. And of course, plenty of disruption, right? But for that, we need a lot of investments too.
And, I think in today's world, and until things change in terms of culture in many companies, I think Carmen's role is probably one of the toughest as innovation, because if she decides to work with Bedeo, and Bedeo, it's really provides operating efficiencies and so on. It's like, wow, Bedeo is so great. If it doesn't work, it's going to be Carmen's fault, not your fault. So in that sense, an insurance company is much more than just selling insurances, no? And because they also have a big balance sheet that invests in real estate and all type of insurances, from cars to life to home to devices to all sorts of things. I think one concept that is many times misunderstood is that insurance companies don't just work with insurtech companies, no? Because many times what you're trying to solve is a need or a pain point that we were saying at the beginning, and eventually are other type of companies that have nothing to do with the insurance world that solve those needs. So from an innovation perspective, how do you deal internally with, okay, to your committees and so on, it's like we don't just need to focus on insurtech companies, we need to focus on technologies that help us become a better company in front of our clients, more efficient?
Well, in case of Mutua, I think it's something easier than other companies because when we appear with a startup, people who decide are not afraid, they trust on us. And you're proof that they trust on us. But I think the most difficult for us is when a company is asking for a POC and they want to do a test with real clients. And we say, with employees, it could be, but with real clients, we are not going to fold. This is, I think, for me, is the difference. Because with other companies that they are building a value proposal, they want to create, they want to prove day by day. And in our case, as we are an incumbent, this incumbent sometimes is a very good position, but in other situation is a gap we need to keep working and to solve. But I think we are going really faster because, for example, in our collaboration as investors in Kibo, now we are not looking just for profitability. We are looking for business opportunities. So we are moving from just the money to what is the strategic impact that we are going to have with this money that is not just in the P&L. So it's going to be far away from what was the first objective. So I think in the case of Mutua, we've evolved a lot. And I think it's going faster than what I expected when I joined the company.
I think we could be talking for ages, but I think our time is over.
Yeah.
So thank you very much to all the panel, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Gracias. Don't all leave, please. Last panel is the good, the bad, and the ugly in the investment phase. So our next panel is going to talk about how an investment round cooks up, what happens during it, and what problems they're finding from the investor point of view and from the startup point of view. I'd like to welcome to the stage our moderator, José Manuel Carol from B Startup Sabadell, and the rest of his panel, Sergio Pérez from Sabadell, Jordi Ferrer from Zinkler, Francesc López from Stay for Long, and Juan Antonio Castro from Costa Duran. Warm welcome. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much. Hi to everyone. I'm José Carol. I'm the operating director of B Startup at Banco Sabadell. I'm going to do a short introduction of the panel that we have here today. The thing of the panel is we are trying to cover the whole space of an investment round, from the access to the investors up to the term sheet and shareholder agreement, and we are trying to do this in just 25 minutes. I think that we have on time, so we are going to be like rushing from one thing to the other, and I think that you all learn something about the panel. So from my left side, I have Sergio Pérez, the director of Sabadell Venture Capital, Jordi Ferrer from Zinkler, Francesc López from Stay for Long, and Juan Antonio Castro from RCD. If you can please introduce yourself and the company you are representing in about 1 minute, please.
Okay, so I start. So good afternoon first. I'm Sergio Pérez. I'm part of the Sabadell Venture Capital team. I work in the Venture Capital division of Bank Sabadell. So what we do is we try to identify startups with high potential in the seed and Series A stage. So we invest in capital in that stage. And also we have a venture debt. That it's a hybrid kind of financial the startups. It's a mix between equity and debt. Also, we have a B Startup, that it's our brand dedicated to the startups. So we try to provide them loans, credit cards, TPVs, things like that. And the different thing is that we try to speak the startup language. Because when you go inside a bank, sometimes you're afraid. So now you cannot do that because we try to speak the same language that entrepreneurs. And finally, in the bank, we have another area that is InnoSales, in which we try to identify solutions for the bank. That means they are thinking in the bank of the future, so they are trying to identify solutions that they can help us to have revenues in the future.
Hi, this is Jordi Ferrer. I am the founder and CEO of Zinkler. Zinkler is a B2B SaaS platform that allows brands to run consumer market research in real time in more than 30 countries globally at a fraction of the cost of a conventional market research project. What we do is basically turn an industry, which is market research, which is a professional services industry, which means pretty slow, pretty expensive, and pretty occasional in terms of usage. We turn that into a SaaS model where we go very fast. We deliver results. Our platform delivers results very fast at a fraction of the cost of conventional providers, as I was saying earlier. And as a result, what we do is increase a lot the frequency of usage of market research and consumer data in the daily lives of brands across the countries. Our main clients are tier 1, tier 2 companies, marketing departments across every single vertical, B2C vertical, from FMCG to telecoms, to auto, healthcare, etc. We launched 3 years ago, more than 3.5 years ago, initially in Spain, and we have now offices in London and in South America too. And we have raised, in terms of, this is pretty relevant for the discussion we are going to be having, we have raised a bit more than 2 million euros on equity, and we have raised a bit more than 1 million in non-dilutive funding. And we are aiming to a Series A on the first half of 2020. And finally, just a very, very brief thing. I know that I had a minute, so I'm extending a bit longer. But my background is it's slightly different from a traditional, I would say, entrepreneur. So my background has been most of my career, all of my career in big multinationals on the research industry, in global roles, mainly in London. At some point, I decided that we had, and technology could change the rules of the game of the industry of market research, and I decided to jump to the other side. This is what we are doing currently. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Fran. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of the company Stay For Long. We are a hotel marketplace, but with the specialty that we are only focusing long stays bookings. What we do is that as much longer as you are going to stay there, we offer you better conditions. We started the company 4 years ago, in 2015. We are currently having deals with more than 250,000 hotels worldwide. The thing is that we aim to become a specific supply partner for hotels to bring them the best type of consumer that they wish to have, those who stay more than three days. We founded the company in 2015, but in sales we started 3 years ago. Whereas the first year we closed with a GMV of 5.8 million. Last year we closed with a GMV of 46 million. And this year we are closer around 100 million as GMV. We are active now in more than 18 countries. We have now a first step in Africa. And in terms of fundraising, we do trust that we have been really working capital efficient. Just we make a fundraising of 2.9 million during these 3 years. And to sum it up, these guys are investors in my company, so I'm sure we are going to have a really nice battleground now. Okay?
Hi, good afternoon all. I'm Juan Antonio Castro, working at RCD Lawyers, which is a law firm specialized in entrepreneurship and innovation. It's the first law firm that established this department 15 years ago already. We work mainly with investors, we work with the startup, but we work with the whole ecosystem, accelerator, incubators. So we have quite wide knowledge about the market, what they want, and we try to facilitate the deals. So thank you for having me today.
Okay, so thank you all for the presentation. I would like to start talking about how do you do to access the investor, how long does it take to talk to an investor? How long does it take to close a round? More or less, if you can, explain to the audience more than me, how do you address the investors and how do you do it, please?
Many questions here. So I would say that how do we reach investors? So I think it changes. I mean, this is in terms of, I think it changes a lot in terms of depending obviously on the phase you are. So if you are in a seed phase, so you are trying to raise your first round, there are many decisions obviously that you have to take. One of them is whether you want to really have venture capital or you want to have, let's say, more friends, family, or business angels or whatever in a very early stages, whether you are ready to have, let's say, venture capital in your cap table. Or my recommendation, basically, if I were to choose, I would go with professional institutional investors as soon as possible, because, let's say, we have in our cap table Sabadell and 2 other venture capital, Inverready and Caixa. And I think they understand better the logics of what it takes and the logics of growth within a startup. So what you have to do is, first of all, understanding if you want to go along the lines of VCs, is understanding. My recommendation, basic one, is going to be understand the ecosystem, understanding who is doing what. There are plenty of investors, but you have to understand what is that you need, given the industry you want to operate in and given the stage in terms of development of your company, and start for that, having, let's say, a good knowledge, and then probably going local, because otherwise it's going to take you ages to get to a good result. Go local to local investors, local ecosystem, if you are in a market where it's rich enough.
Well, in my case, what I remember is like, the thing is that when you you start up your business, you don't have a deep knowledge about what is meaning of fundraising, because you want to be focusing Workday. The thing is, it's true that the easiest way when you need money is make the 3F, friends, fools, and family. In our case, we did that 3 years ago, July 2016. And the thing is that one of the nice things of Madrid and Barcelona is that the ecosystem is quite big, and you have easy access to know exactly who is who. Once you exactly know the different steps of fundraising, to start from friends, fools, family, like pre-seed, seed, then you can know who are the main actors there. In our case, it's true that the majority of the biggest VCs that you can find in Madrid, in Barcelona, they have a really strong PR strategy, so it's quite easy to know who is who there. And what I did, as far as I remember, is create a CRM, like a list of all those investors that I think they can match with what I am doing and what I'm expecting to do. And what I do that it takes too much time is try to create a network staff to speak with other startups that they can make you the email intro with those. But it takes too much time. But I think that the way I get access to the investors is through a networking work. So that's what I did.
I agree with what they say, and I would like to recommend to do 3 things if you are looking for money. The first thing is to do the homeworks. I mean, try to, as they explain, identify what kind of investors are you going to address. So if they are in the seed, in the Series A, if they are more focused in fintech, in digital solutions, in which area, okay? The second thing is that prepare what you are going to show them. We are human, and usually we have plenty of business plans in our table. And the first impression is very, very important. So as we are people like you, it's important to try to identify with who you are going to speak and use LinkedIn. Because I'm sure that I know someone that you know. And if I receive a call from someone telling me, look, this company, because it's good in this, this, and this, it's not sure that I'm going to invest it, but at least I'm going to take more attention to that company. And who say any other thing, he's lying. I mean, we're human, and if you receive a call from a colleague who recommends something, you are going to spend more time. And the third thing is that, unfortunately, there are a lot of no. So it's not that your project is not good, or maybe it's not, or you are going not to get your dream, but we have a lot of projects in our table, and we have to manage where we are going to invest. So no is something that you are going to receive a lot of times. But I don't mind. If you believe in your project, you think that it's a good project, keep knocking to our doors and try to identify the people who can invest in your company. Because all the venture capitals, all in the world, we have something that we call anti-portfolio. There are companies that we say no, and finally, there are unicorns. So think in that three things.
Just two questions. Well, first of all, we know well each other. I was just wondering how many investors deck per year you receive by email?
Roughly, we receive roughly 1,000 companies, or maybe a bit more, but roughly 1,000 and 1,200, that's the deal flow.
Means that you maybe filter in few seconds, right? I mean, you just check the first deck sites and say, this is going to match or this is not going to match.
I think that the first thing that you see, or that you, if it can fit with your investment strategy and with the ticket size that you normally invested, and if yes, you continue. If not, you have to say no as quickly as you can.
Just because when I started and I didn't know about that, I remember that I started to make a spam to send my investors decks to thousands of venture capital just when we started. And some guys, they will say me, okay, this is great, but we all invest in fintechs. And I said, yeah, but I'm going to be the next booking. Yeah, but I don't care about that, no? And the second thing is that even if it's true, what I suggest you is to be insisting, and maybe we can explain the case that we got here. This guy told us 3 times no, and the fourth one he said yes. So maybe sometimes it's based on be sure and use all the steps, be insisting, and sometimes you are so lucky now, but I remember first it was you, then it was him, it was you again, and the fourth one say, okay, we're going to get in. So.
The thing is, by having this, in my experience as well, you have to take into account and be careful about how many doors you want to open, no? Because I think it's good to be selective. You have to have enough options, but I think you need to be sure that you are not opening too many doors, because there are things that are not going to work, and I think you have to identify the VC will identify it, but as well, the entrepreneur has to identify whether there is going to be a possibility that this investor, this VC, is going to be ending up, let's say, investing in the company. You have to identify early that in the process. Otherwise, it's a waste of time, waste of, let's say, of time or expectations that you have. Then in terms of, it's like managing a portfolio of potential clients, no? When you are that you have to sell into, you have to segment them, understand them, and identify who are the ones that are more likely to buy your product. And to do that earlier, let's say, and it's a combination of inbound, if you want to sell, let's say, or outbound in terms of sending stuff to them, or inbound in terms of, let's say, creating some type of knowledge or awareness of your company in the ecosystem. But at the end, you have to manage, in my experience, a manageable set of potential investors. Otherwise, it's very time intensive, which for sure is going to be. But then you get crazy, you spend time on things that are not going to happen, and it's better to know it sooner than later.
And also, you ask, how long does it take? It's important that you prepare everything, presentation, business plan, things like that, but because when you have the interest of one VC or potential investors, a good advice is that to have everything ready. Because if I say yes, and you send the business plan 3 weeks ago, or 3 weeks later, sorry, you say, okay, I don't remember exactly what it was that project. And also, that is one phase of the dealing. But the second is, when you receive the term sheet from someone, and in that case, I'm going to José Antonio to speak better than me, is that go to a lawyer, because sometimes, the first time, you don't understand nothing. And the first time you say, I'm not going to sign this agreement in my life.
But before arriving to the term sheet, when you are on the due diligence process and the VC is analyzing the company, what kind of things can you do to push a bit to the VC to receive that term sheet and not get too long, the period makes too long? What kind of advice or tips can you give to the audience to push on that?
Based on my experience, the first thing to be strong and to have the force to delay the whole process is be sure that you don't need cash. Because if you don't have cash, you have to run. And if you don't have cash, investors, they are going to smell blood, So my suggestion is, if you want to be strong to negotiate every single word from the term sheet of the shareholders' agreement, planify well your cash flow workflow and be sure. I think that's exactly the base. Because what you heard when you start in that wall, investors, some of them, they impose you some conditions in the term sheet with the reason that this is a standard in the business. This position is a standard. And after, what I say is nothing is a standard. Everything is flexible. Okay? So the only way to win that fight is to have time, because he has the money, you don't have it. You have employees, you have to make payments, so the only way is try to be sure that you are going to have the time to deal with that.
Maybe?
Sorry, just one very quick point on that. I mean, I completely agree with that. And the only way, at least in my experience, to speed up the process of getting a term sheet is to have, let's say, one in your hand. More than one. That's the only way. So it's to have, let's say, to create the sense of urgency and to create the sense of scarcity, so that it's an only opportunity, and the investor is going to, let's say, it's going to lose an opportunity because someone else is going to take it. If you don't have any, the first one is the most difficult one to have. Once you have one, it's easier because you create, let's say, and that's in my experience, probably is the only way to speed up the process.
It's the same thing that Booking does. It's one room remaining at this price. No, it's like, wow, I'm going to miss it. So, what's the opinion of
I was just going to say, it's quite similar to Jordi. I think it's important when you are going to plan an investment round, first to plan in advance with time. We usually recommend 3 to 6 months to plan, and you have to think that you will be working also with the round as an entrepreneur. You have to think what you need. You have to think if you just need capital, and you have to think if you need other kind of resources, other kind of partner who potential the networking and who can help your company to grow. It depends on the level, where is the company in the project itself. But in regards to the term sheet, of course, we recommend that. We recommend that try to open to different investors, and if one of them impose an exclusivity on the investment, try to have a short-term period, because if not, you're missing other opportunities. So, yeah.
You were going to say something before?
No, what you say, it's also important that to have someone in the table impartial, because, for example, when you are looking for the Series A or maybe a C+, usually you have different kind of investors. You have the family offices, you have maybe the business angels, and you have the VC. And all of us, with entrepreneurs, we try to have the best for the company. But when you are dealing for a deal, sometimes what you are looking for is different than what the business angels are looking for or the family's offices. And sometimes to have someone like the lawyer in the table, it's very important. Sometimes I listen, it's very expensive. It's the most cheap that you are going to have, because they are going to go, he's going to help you to go fast. He's going to understand the different things, because finally, he's in the middle. I mean, he wants to close the deal, but he understands you, he understands the entrepreneurs, he understands the business angels, and he used to do that. So he knows the entrepreneurs, he knows the VC, so it's only an advice that when you are in the second round, also think about that, because there are different interests in the same table.
The thing is that sometimes who is in Series A, the lawyers are, which I was telling my experience that we didn't go with a lawyer on as entrepreneurs in the first. We negotiate the term sheet and then the shareholders agreement, let's say, without expert advice. So I'm crossing fingers that we didn't sign anything very.
You said
very
that
bad.
you
But
regret on
sorry?
You regret on that.
Yeah. Well, I will regret, I'm sure. No, but sometimes you don't know exactly who the lawyer represents, no? Because there are, let's say, three interests in the table, which should be aligned, but it's not going to be consistently aligned with everything. One is the entrepreneurs, two is the investors, and three is the company. And the lawyer can either play a role of trying to align everyone, or can, but in the terms, if he or she negotiates something, he will have to negotiate something on behalf of one of these three. So sometimes it's a matter of what role.
Juan Antonio, normally, which is how do you manage this kind of situation? Which is your
Of course, I think it's important to understand what they want, what the kind of investor want. If it's a financial investor, if it's a corporate investor, we try to understand what the entrepreneur wants, if they want to grow, if they want to expand. So I think it's kind of sensibility in trying to be in the middle. I agree completely with him that, of course, we are not part of the project, but we try to facilitate the deal. And sometimes it's important to be advised from the beginning, before the term sheet, as you said, because once the term sheet is signed, executed, after it's maybe too late.
But the advice would be different to an investor than for the same clause. It's going to be different to the investor to the entrepreneur. That by definition, because the interests are different, and therefore the type of negotiation that you have to undertake is different.
I disagree with you in something. I think that, at least in my experience, usually the lawyer it's true that sometimes he's a lawyer recommended by the investors, or he's a lawyer recommended, but it's his professional job. So usually they try to be impartial and to try to, sometimes you have the feeling that there are more representing the investors. And sometimes I have the feeling that they are representing more the entrepreneurs than us. So I think that,
actually, you feel that.
yes, I think that usually if they are professional in this area and they are used to work with startups, venture capital, business angels, they are not going to do anything strange because they can do it once. So, no, I don't know. You are.
Agreed. Thank you. Yeah.
Trying to get a bit deeper on the term sheet, I would like if you can set really fast which are the most relevant clauses, or which are the most important things to look for on a term sheet, not to sign a thing that you regret some days or some months or some years later.
I think it's important that you count the experience, maybe that you regret, and after we make a summary.
Yeah, well, after my experience with my investors, what I say, I mean, what you always try to protect is don't lose the freedom to decide the daily operations or the quarterly operations of the company. So I think there is always towards the board of directors, how are we going to be managed? And the second is how the big things, who has the right to sell the company or not. So what we always have been trying is to, from one side, understand what is the deep interest of the investors. They want to try to control as much as they can the investment, and they used to ask you for liquidation preference or things like that. But in our side, what we always try is I'm the responsible to make this company going from 0 to 1,000. So give me the flexibility, give me the freedom to decide what is the budget, give me the freedom to decide how much money I'm going to spend in talent, how much I am going to spend in marketing, because the main reason why you invested in my company is because of me and my team. But it's always exactly the same. It depends on how much cash you are going to have, because this is the runway. And if you have a longer runway, you will have a lot of time to discuss with them and try to get a fair deal, no? But to sum up is try to lose don't worry too much about the long term, and be sure that at the short term, because this is the real thing, how are you going to pay salaries the next month? How I'm going to make the marketing next month? Be sure that you have the support of the investors by the flexibility of these conditions to manage well the company without them.
No, I completely agree with Francesco in terms of that for me the most important, and there are so many areas, so many clauses, but what would be the most important one for me is to ensure that you have the freedom. I mean, once you have, let's say, a board, obviously the board and investors, so they are part of the company, and it's good. We can have a discussion whether it's good or not. For me, it's a very good thing to have professional, let's say, investors in your company and on your board, but there are many daily decisions that you have to take, and you have enough margin to have and to operate very efficiently and in an agile way in your day-to-day, even more than in day-to-day in strategic areas, etc. So it's important that in the partnership for the most important part is to ensure that happens. So the entrepreneurs and the management has the freedom to operate, obviously always for the good of the company, but with enough margin of money over.
Which is something that used to happen. I mean, investors are more finance investors, and they don't know about mobility, they don't know about travel industry. So it doesn't have sense that someone that has a strong background in venture capital and investment, he's gonna force you to decide if you are gonna open a market, because they don't have the strong, deep knowledge about that. So in the majority of the cases, and it's the case that we are having, we have a huge flexibility to operate the company the way that we're doing.
The thing as well is, sorry.
No, I would like to add something. The investment agreement and the shareholders agreement, it's a paper, okay? And I completely agree what they say. But something that I think that it's important, and sometimes we forget it, is that speak with other entrepreneurs that they have been invested by that VC. Because the paper is something that usually you put in a box or in your wardrobe. But you have to speak with people who has been invested by that VC or business angels to know what is their behavior in different situations. Because the paper is something, but what is your behavior when there are things or difficulties or different questions? It's very important.
You know, I was going to say that's at the end of the day, we are people rather than, and then the way and the culture of the investor, something that you need to understand. As well, there is other thing, which is in your next round, the shareholders agreement is going to be completely open and reopened and changed. So there are, let's say, we are not signing shareholders agreement that are going to last forever. So are going to be, let's say, changing every round. So we have to. So you will either have the opportunity to change things if you have more of it, depending on how the company goes. But in the new investor and the new leading investor is going to come with other, let's say, with his agenda, with her agenda, and you will have to discuss it together with the current shareholders on the new shareholders agreement. So.
And before finishing, Juan
yes,
Antonio, you have
for sure. So
something
coming back to what is important for each part. So that depends a lot on the kind of in case of the investor, the kind of investor. If it's a VC, or usually they try to protect the ecosystem, but the exit. So they try to invest to make an exit in the future. If it's a corporate investor, they try to invest to be in the project, and they try to, in the future, to acquire or to take more participation in the project. It depends. So at the end, and the entrepreneur, what they want is to have freedom, as they said. They want to have an incentive plan. They want to know exactly what kind of role they are going to have in the project after the investment, what kind of clauses for both parties. Typical what drag along for the investor, liquidation preference, we can count them. But it's important to define for the entrepreneur the role and the freedom as a management body in the company. It is important for the investor to define the reserve matters to take control of the project.
So time is over. Thank you very much, Sergio, Jordi, Francesc, and Juan Antonio for your time. Thank you all the audience to be here, and please give a big applause for the panel.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's been a very interesting panel, very interesting end of the day. I've certainly learned a lot. This particular last session was very interesting. We're rounding up the day, and tomorrow we're going to have in this playground data digital revolution, advanced tech, and smart mobility for travel. Thank you very much, and see everybody tomorrow.